Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto and Hinata Time Traveled to the Past. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. They gasped once more. Naruto's red eyes narrowed as the Rasengan formed in his right hand. He had several broken bones as well as several cuts, and his chakra was on the verge of exhaustion. Probably the fact of also using the Kaibai's chakra indiscriminately in Sanin mode added more opportunities to die, but apparently that had already lost importance. There was just a strange, apathetic determination in his once kind eyes as he glared with some anger and desolation at the one he'd once considered his best friend. Sasuke had the Manjiki Sharingan activated, and his left hand flashed, imbued with Chidori. In Itachi's eyes, he had reached perfection in his jutsu to a point virtually no Uchiha had touched before. However, he was not unscathed. The battle against Naruto had also left him with several broken bones and slightly depleted chakra since, unlike him, he had not fought in the Great Ninja War. His resolve to destroy Konoha, however, was stronger than ever. Nothing would make Sasuke change his decision, not even the one he once considered his brother, nor the pale-haired girl who looked at them in the distance, crying while healing Hyuga, who had received an attack directed at Naruto. Before leaving Konoha, those tear-filled green eyes had been able to stop anything, even his darkness, but it was all over. Everything had been consumed by her hatred and his pain. Now only one thing mattered: to avenge his clan. And to achieve this, to finally break the ties that tied him to Konoha and to destroy the village that had despised his clan, Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno had to die that day. Because he had appreciated them so much that he had almost forgotten his revenge, because he had loved them so much that now he only hated them with intensity, his greatest enemies carried the power of the Senju. They fought in the land where thousands had given their lives, a place that was everything and nothing at the same time, full of life, full of death, full of hope, and full of destruction. The place where they tried with the last forces to win that war so that Madara would not destroy the world as it was known in pursuit of a utopian, violent, and false dream. This is the end, Sasuke, Naruto said deadpan. You leave me no choice. For the ninja world to have peace, you must die. Sasuke's smile was empty and cruel. Curious. I think the same. So that I can carry out my revenge and destroy Konoha, you must die. Naruto narrowed his eyes in pain, his gaze drifting to the corpses of Kakashi, Ino, Shikamaru, Neji, Tenten, Lee, Choji, and as many other ninjas that Sasuke had killed before his eyes prior to their fight. That would definitely never forgive him. Never. The two looked at each other for the last time, and at the same time, they launched themselves at each other to end everything once and for all. Hinata and Sakura screamed in shock and terror. The wounds that Sasuke had inflicted on both of them stung their bodies, but it didn't matter. They ran to the point where they were both hovering over each other, ready to kill each other. Hinata activated his Byakugan. Sakura forgot all the dangers and activated the only technique that her teacher had forbidden her to use, even if it meant her death. But nothing mattered to her or to Hinata. Her hearts were faster than her minds. And it was in that moment of screaming, fear, hatred, and resentment, in which four pairs of eyes met, that the universe decided to conspire against them once again. Sharingan, Byakugan, and Rasengan collided. Sasuke, Hinata, and Naruto seemed to merge into an intense light, and Sakura next to them closed her eyes, screaming at the feeling of being shattered, of being reduced to nothing by the magnitude of the power that she had collided with. She screamed for Naruto, she screamed for Sasuke, and maybe Hinata, desperate. The golden chakra in her hands mingled with the light, soothing her as it faded. And for that confusing, overwhelming moment, in the midst of her excruciating pain, she wanted with all her might to get away. She wanted to show Sasuke that destruction wasn't going to make him happy and that killing the rest wasn't going to revive those who had already died. She wished that everything was different and that they weren't dying in that war without hope or peace. The greatest wish you have is also the highest price you can imagine. Her teacher had warned her when she taught her that Senju Jutsu, but what else could she do? If he really could, if he really had the right to want one thing, he wanted one chance, just one chance, to change the story that had led to that tragedy. A place where Sasuke realized that revenge wasn't everything and where Naruto could be happy. A world where there was no war, where there was no hatred and destruction, and where there was an alternative to killing each other. And then everything stopped. They screamed, and the light went out and took them away. Sakura, Naruto. Tsunade yelled in disbelief from where she was, with Shizune holding her. He didn't care what happened to Sasuke. After all, he was the cause of their being in this situation. The corrupted blood that ran in his veins had led the world to that war, where they paid with pain and blood the price of revenge for the damned Uchiha clan. He smashed his fists on the bloody ground helplessly. The hero of the village, that girl that she had raised as a daughter, and that Hyuga girl had disappeared before her eyes without her being able to do anything to avoid it. The Konoha villagers raised their eyebrows when they heard the third explosion so far this day, and it was barely 10 in the morning. Surely it had to be done again, of course, with them. Every day was the same, so they didn't worry. They were used to those situations. They shook their heads and went back to their work. At Ikaraku Ramen, Chuchai was smiling quietly with amusement as he prepared the ramen that the only female Sanin had ordered. Tsunade was a frequent customer, and not because she loved ramen, unlike certain little people, but because she had gotten used to it after being dragged around so many times. She rolled her eyes at the next explosion. "Those brats again," he murmured with resignation. "Kushina has always been like this, Tsunade-sama," the man said with amusement, placing the bowl of ramen in front of the Sanin. "Also, I think he said that he wanted to test his new technique on Fugaku-san. Wasn't Makoto and Fugaku's date today?" Chuchai nodded calmly. "That's why you chose this day." The blonde didn't know whether to laugh or feel sorry for Fugaku, so she decided instead to eat the ramen calmly. The dates between Fugaku and Makoto had their strange ritual, taking into account that although Makoto had been chosen by the council and Fugaku's parents as the future matriarch, she was also the woman that Fugaku Uchiha loved, although he was not usually adept at showing it. Yet his moments, of course, Tsunade knew that because otherwise Fugaku would never admit to putting himself in a situation like a date in the village in everyone's eyes and not inside the Uchiha neighborhood. In the village, the main martyrdom of him had a first and last name, Kushina Uzumaki. Kushina was quite cheerful, mischievous, and hyperactive, and one of her greatest pleasures was making life difficult for Fugaku Uchiha. It was love at first sight. Not even Minato, at Fugaku's request, could stop the redhead when it came to orchestrating mischief. "Wow, Kushina sure doesn't waste time," Jiraiya said, sitting next to his friend and ordering ramen. They both shrugged. "You're going to pay me, Fugaku idiot, Titebane." They turned with the noodles in their mouths just to see how Fugaku ran past them and how Kushina chased him, surrounded by an intense fighting aura that promised pain. Following them, running in a strange but usual procession, Minato Namikaze, Makoto Uchiha, Hana Hyuga, Hayashi Hyuga, and Hisashi Hyuga chased them in turn, trying to ensure that no one died before their time. "Kushina, don't you dare touch Fugaku," screamed Makoto, irritated. "It's not fair that you leave me without a boyfriend." "Don't get in trouble, Kushina," Hana yelled back, then sighed in resignation. Minato Namikaze, the rare genius, ran discouraged and more resigned than the others. His unmatched speed had made him known and feared since he was a child, but he knew there was no point in using it to catch up with his friend and his girlfriend. In the fight between Uzumaki and Uchiha, it was better for no one to get involved. They would leave them there until they got tired or beat each other up. After all, they were ninjas. Hayashi Hyuga ran, trying to maintain the dignity of his position, wondering when he had stopped caring about protocol and the honor of being the heir to start chasing scandalous and murderous redheads. If someone from his clan saw him, he wouldn't be able to face his father or the rest of the council for a long time. On the contrary, his twin, Hisashi Hyuga, was laughing openly and enjoying the worthy spectacle. Having been raised with the harsh and cruel laws of the Hyuga branch, Hisashi had loved all the freedom that Kushina's friendship had brought him. So yeah, he was having a blast. Sanin watched the scene, slurping down the noodles as if it were an interesting movie. When the youngsters disappeared from their sight and only the trail of smoke from the race remained, they returned to adjust their position and wait patiently for the results. Fugaku was most likely brought in for Tsunade to heal. Routine, pure routine. Away from them, Kushina Uzumaki was snarling, her purple eyes had turned red, and her pupils had elongated. The Kaibai complained inside about her pitiful spectacles, her shrill voice, and her discomfort sleeping with such a dense jinkriki. He ignored him, as he often did, and focused his interest on capturing and slaughtering the Uchiha heir. Nobody teased Uzumaki Kushina and lived to tell about it. She was the bloody Havanan, one of the best ninjas in Konoha, at the mere age of 19. "Stop fucking around, Uzumaki," Fugaku yelled without caring about the protocol and etiquette that he had been taught so much since he was a child. When he faced Kushina, he forgot many things, his dignity as heir to his clan among them. Kushina sped up the run, and so did he. They were almost at the gates of Konoha, and the ninjas that stood guard looked at them with amused smiles and without concern. They didn't intervene, as Minato knew no one who valued his life in the slightest would dare get in the way of the redhead. She snorted and, managing to get to the black-haired man, flung herself onto his back with an evil grin. They hit the ground hard and were soon lost in a cloud of smoke, dust, and blows. The others stopped in time to look and listen with nervous giggles to Kushina's screams and Fugaku's curses and groans. They were about to reply, request, or discuss the fight in question when it happened. Just outside the Konoha gate, there was an explosion. Kushina stopped instantly and looked up, surprised and wary, to focus on the spot. A few meters from them and the others, a thick cloud of dust obstructed their vision in the entrance. Minato was a flash, and the next second she was next to Kushina with a kunai in hand and with the look that would raise so much fear and adoration in the future. Fugaku was still on the ground under Kushina's foot, but his Sharingan rolled into his fierce and dangerous eyes. Hayashi and Hisashi had stepped in time in front of Hana, and their activated Byakugan would have read any demon's soul. After the first impression, Makoto had barely blinked, and her delicate, kind, and slightly pampered face had mutated into a cold and chilling expression with the Sharingan spinning in her eyes as well. The guards had already mobilized to notify the ANBUS and the Hokage in case there was an attack on Konoha. Kushina cocked her head emotionlessly and released Fugaku from her grip. Without even diverting his red eyes from him, he asked the Hyuga, "What do you see?" Hana narrowed her eyes as she answered, her misgivings and confusion clear. 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, passed out. "A trap," Minato muttered seriously, without understanding. The others looked at each other without knowing what to think. The ANBU would eventually join them, so they waited patiently. The dust and smoke cleared a few seconds later, revealing the 4 young men clearly on the ground. The women, who must have been a few years younger than Kushina, wore Konoha's regulation ninja outfits. One had pale cherry-colored hair and the other a black so intense it turned bluish, yet they swore they would never see them. They had ever seen before that. The boys were something else. There was nothing familiar about them in their clothes, and the first thing they noticed was that one was blonde and the other was black-haired. What they did have in common was that the 4 of them were literally a mess, wounded, exhausted, and bleeding, as if they had been in a long, ongoing war and were on the brink of death. Had they been attacked? By whom? Why? Who were they, and why were they there? What were they up to? Suddenly, Mikoto took a step ahead of Hyuga with a frown. Mikoto? Hana asked softly. Look at your bandanas, she whispered back slowly. Her eyes were on the torn cloth with the plaque that normally identified a ninja's village. Shinobi Army, she read. Armada Shinobi. He has a Konoha bandana, Fugaku said, pointing to the blonde boy, although he was just as sure as the rest that they hadn't seen him in their lives either. What was happening? Their answers could only be obtained if they woke up, and it was lucky that they started doing it right then and there. They moved between groans of pain and gasps, and Minato and his group tensed automatically, waiting for an attack or whatever to come. However, it seemed that their injuries were too severe, as they opened their eyes with difficulty. At the same time, they sat up little by little, tired and confused but alert, looking around as if they did not understand what was happening, as if they were defining where they were or why. Naruto focused his lost and tense gaze straight ahead and was met by eyes that were the same as his own, with the same tone and the same shape, and he stood up so abruptly in shock and disbelief that he fell back. Who are you? Kushina demanded sharply, pointing her finger at them. He kicked Fugaku, who was on the ground, and made sure to step on his toes before walking off all haughty and dangerous. The Uchiha gave him a death glare as he got up with Mikoto's help. What have they not heard? Mikoto ignored the boys and looked at her fiancé. Are you all right, Fugaku? Sasuke raised his head at that and looked at what was undoubtedly an illusion or something close to it. He lashed out at Naruto, furious, snatching him from the girl's hands because that was too much. Messing with his parents was something he would never forgive and would lay waste to Konoha for it. What the fuck is this? He yelled, grabbing Naruto by the lapels and pointing in the direction of where the others were. What are you playing at? This is fucking too much. Shut up. Naruto yelled back, just as angry and confused as he was. His eyes went from Minato to Kushina, not knowing if he had gone crazy or died, but if Sasuke was there, it definitely couldn't be heaven. I don't know what's going on, Dadabeo. Sakura, her lips parted, was the only one who understood as she stared in the flesh at the man she had seen in one of the cage photos that was in her teacher's office. That young man with blonde hair could not be any other than Yondaime Hokage, but he was much younger than him when he died almost 18 years ago, the day he protected Konoha from the Kaibai and sealed it in Naruto. Hinata, for her part, was seriously stunned. What she saw behind those ninjas that flanked the door was her village, her beloved village intact, even though the last vision she had of Konoha before leaving for the war had been the scene destroyed after Pain's attack. They had barely begun to recover when the war broke out for the protection of Naruto and Killer Bee. The war. Almost instantly, he was alarmed. What had happened to the war? It's us who demand an explanation here, Titebane. Kushina yelled, looking disdainfully at the fight between the 2 young men. If you are enemies of Konoha, you can go pray to all the gods you know because they don't go beyond the gate, like my name, Uzumaki Kushina. Uzumaki, his era familiar with Naruto. Sakura got up slowly, a little pale and a little sick, as her mind began to come to the conclusion of what had happened. It wasn't a genjutsu, but it couldn't be her reality either, not with Konoha full of splendor and life, not with the people who were in front of them. Who are you? Fugaku asked coldly, seeing the pattern in Sasuke's eyes. The Sharingan is the characteristic jutsu of the Uchiha, and nobody does not deserve to wear it. Sasuke shot her a pointed look. You're right about that. No one who is an Uchiha deserves to wear the Sharingan, so tell me, who are you? I'm the only Uchiha alive, he exclaimed. It must be an illusion so twisted it fooled even Itachi's eyes, but an illusion. That man couldn't be his father, he couldn't. All his clan had perished. The Kodo gave him a surprised and hard look. Don't talk nonsense. The Uchiha clan is the most powerful in Konoha, you can't be the only one. In fact, I've never seen you before. Who are you? Sakura interrupted with a tremulous voice. Who is the Hokage? Kushina looked at him with disdain. What do you mean, who is the Hokage? Everyone knows who the Hokage is, Titebane. Saruto by Hiruzen, Minato replied to the surprise of the rest, gently turning the kunai between his fingers, too gently. I am Minato Namikaze. Kushina Uzumaki, the redhead, murmured, irritated but following her boyfriend's action. Hana Hyuga, the girl who could barely be distinguished behind the imposing backs of the 2 Hyuga, introduced herself. They are Hayashi and Hisashi Hyuga, she added, pointing at the boys, who remained expressionless. Hinata looked in his direction in surprise. Her mother's. It couldn't be. Her mother had died when she was 7 years old. That was impossible. Mikoto Uchiha and Fugaku Uchiha. The young Ella introduced herself and her stoic fiancé. Now it's her turn. Naruto and Sasuke fell silent. Just then, the ANBUS appeared flanking the Hokage, much younger than they remembered, and next to him, the legendary Sanin. Sakura exchanged a look with Hinata, as it seemed neither Naruto nor Sasuke would react. It was not an illusion. They looked with growing disbelief at Makoto and Fugaku Uchiha, Hana, Hayashi, and Hisashi Hyuga, and Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze, who were about 17. As incredible as it seemed, in one way or another they had traveled to the past. They were in big trouble. Understanding that they were in deep trouble, however, was not enough to find a reasonable solution to how that time distortion had happened and how they would return everything to its natural order. Sakura fully understood that if they were in the past, their mere presence was already dangerous. An instant, just an instant, was enough to do something irreversible because the fluctuation in space-time was incredibly sensitive. Perhaps the future could not get worse, but that was not why you could forget the established laws, and playing with time was one of the few taboo things that existed. Even so, while she was thinking that, a treacherous thought occurred to her, and Sakura flinched under the unfathomable gaze of the Sandame. Who are they, and what are their intentions in Konoha? Sandame's voice was relaxed, and though she was puffing calmly on her pipe, Sakura tensed. That had been the man who had died protecting Konoha from Orochimaru. He had been his teacher's mentor, the kind and venerable Hokage that the town and children admired, but he was also one of the best assassins in the world. One mistake, and they wouldn't count it. Sasuke and Naruto barely blinked, paying more attention to the younger versions of their parents as if they had finally come to the same conclusion as Sakura and Hinata. And the expressions on her faces were hardly more bearable than her silence. Tsunade, of course, lost her patience. "Haven't you heard, brats?" she demanded, frowning suspiciously. He stubbornly stepped forward, fists drawn, his eyes filled with contempt, and Jiraiya and Orochimaru moved in step with him. Fortunately, the Hokage spoke before blood was spilled. "Don't interfere," he ordered simply. "But, Sensei," Tsunade tried to protest. "I'm Sakura Haruno," he interrupted instantly. If she let her teacher talk, they would get into more trouble. She knew her well enough to know that she didn't trust practically anyone, and if she had been allowed, she would be attacking them. He tried not to look at her, not to feel anything about the fact that he was not the same person who had strengthened her so much, but he failed and ended up looking at her. He was so young, he was really young. Without disguising her age, without all the losses she had endured, without the ninja bandana on her forehead, and without her ultimate regeneration technique, Sakura felt that she was looking at a total stranger, and it was more than she could bear. Perhaps Hinata noticed because she approached her shyly, touching her arm to reassure her. "Old man, Tsunade-sama is right." Kushina narrowed her eyes in total suspicion. "We can't trust them." His mother's voice brought Naruto back to reality. He blinked again and glared at her, all the ins and outs of the unlikely situation forgotten. "We would never attack Konoha, Databeo," she screeched, completely ignoring Sasuke. "Nobody told you to talk, Databane." Kushina's voice was higher than Naruto's. Sakura winced, and Hinata cocked her head, but they both understood the connection between the two Uzumaki. They were so alike, full of energy, impetuosity, and complete disregard for restraint. "Kushina, calm down," Minato asked. "I won't calm down," she replied aloud, crossing her arms and puffing out her cheeks with annoyance in a clear tantrum. Tsunade seemed to forget a little of her bad mood before that action of hers. "For once in your life, listen to Minato, Uzumaki," Fugaku snorted dryly. "And who gave you a candle at this funeral, Fugaku idiot?" The girl accused, advancing to give him a kick that, already from experience, Uchiha dodged, giving him a look of superiority. "Enough." The Hokage silenced everyone and stared at the strangers with seriousness, his attention focused on the unusual resemblance between the young blonde man and Minato and on the girl with lavender eyes that characterized the Hyuga with Hana. The black-haired jutsu seemed dangerous, and it was notorious that it marked him as an Uchiha. The only one who lacked any physical connection to his ninjas was the pink-haired girl. However, the pain was evident in the four of them, and it was reflected in their eyes in different ways, in addition to the obvious thirst for blood in the Uchiha boy. Sakura Haruno, he named her. Where are they? What are her intentions here? She closed her eyes. She knew that there was no point in lying. She had no great clues as to what they should do, and, in any case, the truth would come out sooner or later. If her memory served her right, they were in the golden age of Konoha. At that time, the most skilled, feared, respected, and powerful ninjas in the ninja world were in the village. The legendary Sanin. El Rey Amarillo de Konoha, future Oyandame Hokage. The Shinobi God, current Sandame Hokage. "First, I want to know something. How old are you?" he asked Minato. He blinked in surprise but answered. 19. Sakura nodded, making rough calculations. "My name is Sakura Haruno," he repeated. "I have the rank of CH Nin. I'm a Konoha medic Nin and a student of Godame Hokage." Everyone's eyes widened at the information. Godame Hokage. They were barely in the sand. Along with them, she pointed to Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke. "We come from approximately 23 years in the future, right in the middle of the Fourth Great Ninja War." An angry, incredulous silence followed his words. "Why do we have to wait, Databane?" Kushina yelled, hitting a tree near her that shuddered at the impact. "It's not fair. I want to know who they are." The others exchanged looks between exasperated, resigned, and irritated. Sandame had taken these unknown boys to the cage tower for questioning, but not before asking them in the kindest way not to intervene. Surrounded by his personal guard, he simply pushed them away, leaving them torn between disbelief and fury. Being who they were, either by blood or abilities, they weren't used to being ignored, at least Fugaku and Hayashi. Hana was thoughtful, Mikoto was irritated, and Minato was silent. Izashi was the only one who kept his arms crossed, apparently indifferent to the situation. However, the words played over and over in their minds. We come from approximately 23 years in the future, right in the middle of the Fourth Great Ninja War. Was it true or a lie? Who were those guys, really? And if they were telling the truth, what had led to a new war? In fact, knowing that they were in the Fourth World worried them. The conflicts between the countries had been heating up more and more for some time, and the winds of war were hard to ignore. The children in the academy were being graduated in record time, and Minato, at 19 years old, already had a genin team made up of 3 children of 9. One of them had even been assigned to him some time ago when he was only 15 years old, turning out to be one of them. Konoha's youngest masters all the roads and actions were practically in place for the Third War to break out soon. And the young man internally wondered with resignation and a certain sadness if one day it would really be possible to live in peace in that ninja world. Even if the part that they came from the future was a lie, his eyes spoke well of war, pain, anger, and complete hopelessness. A trip through time sounded ridiculous, but Minato knew that it couldn't be completely uncertain. It broke all the rules and taboos in the world and the balance that existed in it. But if it existed, it existed. He waved in his hands the kunai with which he had threatened them and looked at the seal on the handle. His technique, in the most literal of all senses, played with time and space, deforming it at will, but only caused fluctuations in its own actions and not in the course of history. It was an overwhelming power that he had taken from the Nidaime Hokage and perfected in his own way with the help of Kushina and her sealing techniques, which is why he would never tire of saying that she had made him the person he currently was. Do you think it's true? Hana whispered softly, curious but also suspicious. Her lavender gaze remained blank, but only one image came to her mind, that of that girl she had been able to peek through the backs of Hayashi and Hizashi, that girl so similar to her that for a second she watched her with disbelief, mouth ajar. Her features were a bit coarser but at the same time thinner, strangely enough, and of course there were things that differed like hair length or height. Hana was even smaller but less voluptuous. If she was from the future, if that was really possible, she would have the feeling of knowing who that young woman was, and then it would be clear why Hana felt that strange need to hug her and tell her that everything would be fine, to protect her and erase the sadness from her pale eyes. She looked at Hayashi, who continued with a stony face, and she sighed imperceptibly. She already had an idea of what Hayashi would think of everything. Sounds ridiculous, Mikoto replied, brushing back her raven dark hair. His handsome, chiseled face was raw and sharp, his eyes were flat, and his lips were taut. He looked at Fugaku, who was exchanging a piece of important information in silence. Those eyes, Fugaku nodded. I know. What's with those eyes? Kushina asked, confused. And what eyes are they referring to? None of your business, Uzumaki. Before the redhead could launch herself at the young Uchiha, Mikoto stopped her. Kushina-chan, each clan protects its secrets. The Uchiha are not different. Kushina frowned but refrained from commenting, contenting herself with grumbling angrily and hitting the tree harder. Mikoto sighed slightly. She felt upset, remembering the words of that young man who carried the Mangekyo Sharingan in his eyes, which was only supposed to be achieved through certain and bloody requirements. However, the Sharingan was in her blood, and whether there were other ways to obtain it or not, the Mangekyo Sharingan did not concern her as much as the information about the possible extinction of the clan in the not-too-distant future. If that boy really was from the future and was the only one who held the honor of his last name, what had happened? The Uchiha had survived the era of war between clans. They had founded Konoha and had the title of being the most powerful and feared clan of the 5 nations. They were the clan of war. They could not just disappear out of nowhere. Even if the Uchiha ninjas died during the war, there were still civilians. That boy, however, did not seem to be joking or lying. He seemed truly tainted with the heritage of his hatred. She saw the resentment, the emptiness, and the fire of destruction that he carried with him. All Uchiha carried that heritage, ninja or civilian, but few used it deliberately. That young man drove her darkness at her whim, but he also let her drive him. That strengthened him, and Mikoto could affirm it emphatically. She had never seen a more ruthless or terrifying look in her life. Her soul must be fragmented and perhaps destroyed beyond all hope. She pursed her lips somewhat uneasily at that thought. She herself was an Uchiha, she knew what that entailed, but she couldn't help but feel empathy and pain for that boy. What had happened to him? What had happened to them? Sandaime will have to explain, Fugaku said with narrowed eyes. Travelers from the future or fakers, if they carry a Konoha jutsu, cannot be taken lightly. Yes, that's right, Hayashi agreed in a low, even voice. 2 of them belong to our clans. Of course, I suppose it's inevitable that they want to know everything. Even Sandaime shouldn't refuse the demands of the future leaders of the most powerful clans in the village, Hizahi commented sarcastically. Being the Hokage means nothing to you. Hayashi gave him an irritated look. But he has his good side. He's a Chan, Titeben, Kushina said, raising an eyebrow at those who were looking witheringly at the younger Hyuga. It is of some use to us that this pair of bitter people are our friends. Now the withering look became worthy of Kushina Uzumaki, who, with a mocking and dark smile, held them without hesitation. Few people could or had the courage to face those looks. In no uncertain terms, she was an heiress too, of a clan about to fade into nothing, but she was an heiress. She had been brought up for the first part of her life with certain laws and customs that, in the words of the two of them, she had trampled almost entirely with behavior unworthy of her. However, Kushina had never flinched from her provocations since she also had her long and offensive repertoire of physical or verbal revenge, and in some strange way, her friendship was like that, with ups, downs, and provocations every day. Perhaps this was his only way of coping with her life, cloistered in rules. Hisashi shook his head but smiled a little. In the strange friendship they shared, he was the only one who was always saved from the redhead's revenge or beatings. Makoto decided that it was the end of the killing glares. She looked at Minato and asked, "You do not say anything. What do you think about those guys?" Everyone paid attention to him. Among the men, Minato was the youngest, but he had been classified as a rare genius for something and not just for his special abilities. "I'm not sure what to think," he answered honestly. Fugaku raised his eyebrows in a low snort. This must be the first time that the great genius has had no answer. Minato ignored him. "How much will they talk about?" questioned Kushina, extremely frustrated, directed her purplish gaze towards the cage tower with violence. "You're welcome, that's clear," Uchiha replied in a condescending tone. To her unfortunate luck, Kushina's response was to turn on her spot and give her that sweet, twisted smile that preceded a kill. Hayashi and Fugaku instantly went on their guard as the Kaibai within Kushina laughed with glee. Those who said that Jinkrikis were normal, ordinary people who didn't hurt anyone or have murderous instincts were just plain stupid. The smile on her face was slight and wistful. She had a hard time believing what she was looking at and that it really wasn't a dream or a nightmare. Hinata, next to her, moved almost imperceptibly, her eyes on the young woman with the long blue hair and diminutive figure. "Mother," he barely heard her murmur in a tone that seemed to be a joy and a wail. For his part, he directed his gaze towards the red-haired girl who was chasing two of the boys like one possessed while one of the Hyuga twins rolled on the floor with laughter at the spectacle. He then remembered the beautiful red-haired woman who had appeared to him during his fight against the Kaiba. That woman was so beautiful but so terrifying that she had told him that she had been enough to earn herself such a chilling nickname as the Bloody Havana. Looking at her made him remember why her father did nothing more than sigh with resignation and cross her arms. To look at them was to contemplate the life she might have had if that tragic night had never happened. She wished she could feel those ghostly arms clinging to him again, his mother holding him and thanking him for being his son. "Then you have no idea how they got here." The Hokage's voice abruptly broke Naruto's thoughts, who turned to him blinking slowly, somewhat confused. It was strange for him to see Sandaime alive again, alive and young, or younger than they could remember, younger than the last time they had seen him, the day Orochimaru invaded the village and murdered him. He was strange, he was amazing, and he was scary. Inside the office of the cage tower, the four young people had sunk into a pensive silence after a brief and disconcerting story. Sasuke was the only one who hadn't opened his mouth. He just stepped back and heard Sakura chatter and Naruto yell a bit as they connected what happened between the future and the past. They hadn't let anyone in fact, Sarutobi had even ordered his personal guards to leave. The subject was so delicate and intricate that he had not objected even to the absence of his students. A thought flashed through Tsunade's student's mind, though she shook her head stubbornly. "No, Hokage-sama," he replied. Sitting in front of the place where countless times Tsunade had welcomed him with open arms, with joy, anger, frustration, or scolding, she limited herself to looking at the man who had trained her teacher. Thousands of thoughts had flooded her mind, but until she got her hands on some clue, she couldn't go babbling on about whatever she thought. Instead, he turned his gaze to where Hinata and Naruto were watching, almost hungrily, what their young parents were doing. "It was a surreal situation that gave me nothing but a lot of headaches and complete craziness. It was strange to see her loved ones so young and so full of joy and life. It was also painful and difficult. They didn't know what to do. They were so used to his absence, to that continuous emptiness, that even Sasuke seemed lost. His merciless gaze for years was confused. Being in Konoha was little compared to his living parents." Sandaime examined them thoroughly, as each one was lost in thought. There had always been rumors about time travel, malicious rumors and never proven facts. It was such a taboo subject that it could lead to a full-blown war, and with one almost on its back, the last thing he wanted was to add fuel to the fire. What was he supposed to do? How do I avoid any change? How do I send them to him? He knew from Nidaime that his mere existence in that timeline was already a serious mistake that must have caused thousands of fluctuations in the uncertain future. He knew who they were. They had told him everything to believe and wanted to send them instantly, but without a way of arrival. There was no way of departure, and until they found it, how much damage could they cause to everything that was already written? Sarutobi didn't even want to think about it. It was chilling. Time was a passionate and cruel lover, and the punishments for playing with it were brutal and inhumane. Konoha is the same as before pain destroyed it, Databeo. Naruto spoke longingly, forgetting the Hokage, who turned his attention back to him in surprise. "Konoha what?" He nearly yelled in alarm. His pipe fell from her hands and hit the wooden floor, clanging loudly in the silence. Naruto covered his mouth, but it was too late. Sakura made a resigned face. "Konoha destroyed," Sarutobi repeated, incredulous. Since the Foundation had never existed, he was beginning to believe that it wouldn't be a bad idea to change something, but definitely not in his timeline. Hokage-sama, Sakura called with a sigh. I know it would be risky, but... She looked at Sasuke and Naruto. Can you consider the option of changing the future? No, the answer was instant and firm. It's too dangerous. Sasuke's eyes narrowed angrily. Too dangerous, he repeated in a hostile tone. It was the first time she had spoken, and her anger was almost palpable. You have no idea about anything, she added disrespectfully and with sheer contempt. Before Sanin could reply, Sakura turned to look at him, her eyes wide. If I'm not mistaken, the hell we're in was one that you chose to follow and increase, Sasuke-kun, he muttered coldly. There was still love in her heart for him. Yes, Sakura recognized her stupid sentimentality, but there was also resentment. She wanted Sasuke to forget about revenge and come back to them despite what she had done, and even so, she wasn't going to forget his actions. The faces of Ino, Kakashi, and everyone else were fresh in her mind. She could even see her sensei falling to the ground lifeless, and she heard Sasuke's sadistic laughter. And she trembled between impotence and rage. Give me back, Itachi, give me back my mother and father, and my entire clan. Bring them back, and then we can talk. The words that were spoken when they first tried to kill each other resonated between them like amused irony. She now knew she could comply with that unreasonable request, and Sakura wondered if, as she had demanded that day, he would listen and talk without trying to kill them. I didn't believe it. Naruto stepped forward as if foreseeing the impending disaster. Not especially predisposed to defend Sasuke, Sakura noted the tension in her tired body. They are all alive, he said slowly, as if those words were some kind of healing magic. Maybe it was. My mother, my father. He looked at Sasuke warily and said, your parents too. They are alive, he repeated, and his eyes looked thoughtful. We have no future. If we could really change something, would you continue with this nonsense about destroying Konoha, Databeo? Sasuke didn't waver, though there was no compassion or empathy in his voice. As long as my parents and my clan are alive, I couldn't care less about this village. Your parents, Naruto. Sakura ignored Sasuke's disturbing response and stood up. She remembered the young yondaime and the red-haired woman, they. Yes, it's them, Sakura-chan. Naruto glowed as he said it, his voice filled with pure emotion. He seemed suddenly like the 12-year-old boy he had known, clumsy and loud but full of life and confidence, something he had lost in the war. He looked out the window and gestured. Sakura did the same, and Sanin too. The Hokage was not surprised to notice the direction of her gaze. It was obvious the resemblance he had with Minato, although the hyperactive and somewhat rude character came more from the indomitable Kushina. Sasuke also approached, just wanting to see his parents, and he was absorbed watching their young faces. There was more happiness and ease in them than he had seen in all his childhood. His mother had been reasonable, calm, and sweet. Although temperamental and strict, his father, however, was like a machine, ruthless, cold, and a little tolerant of nonsense. Seeing her mother laugh and jump as if she were a capricious teenager and her father dodge the boisterous redhead, something went wrong in the venerable image he had formed of them. Strangely, it didn't bother him. Instead, it stirred a dead emotion in him. Naruto knew of his mother's and Sasuke's mother's friendship, so he wasn't surprised to see them together, although he didn't expect such closeness. His father, on the other hand, looked serene and cool, as he had always imagined yondaime before the big reveal. He felt anxious and expectant. The save chakra that gave him minimal interaction was different from having them live and direct. Without weights, without tragedies, and without the terrible decision to lock the Kaibai in it to protect the village and the balance of power. On the continent, they were just a group of friends joking and laughing, and it moved him to tears. To one side of him, Hinata, who hadn't moved from the window, was watching the interaction in surprised silence. She remembered her mother perfectly, beautiful and stoic, distant and ruthless. One of the most frightening things about her chaotic childhood was her parents' cloudy and conflictive relationship. At that time, being a spectator of their fights and their division, she thought that they had never loved each other and therefore could never love her as a result of their unhappiness. The only exception to that whirlwind of tension and anger was the sweet smile that her mother gave him the day before her death. Her uncle Hisashi hadn't had a better life, and despite her youth, she noticed the hostility, impotence, and desolation in her eyes when he looked at her or when he looked at her proud father. All three had been unfortunate. His uncle was picking up his mother in his arms and flirting with her as if she were a little girl. She laughed, amused, and blushed. Her father didn't seem particularly pleased with the situation as he punched her twin in the shoulder, but he looked almost amused. As her mother was brought back to the ground, her father and her uncle gave a friendly fist bump, and Hana Hyuga hung onto their arms, laughing even more and flashing life and candor. The camaraderie between the twins was as overwhelming as the lack of resentment and the smile of the girl who accompanied them. Hinata wondered how they could be so happy now and so unhappy and broken in the future, because, when Sakura remained oblivious to the intense emotions of the other three. She didn't know much about Hinata, and the secret of Naruto's birth had always kept her blind when she tried to inquire. The chronicles of the Uchiha clan, for their part, were full of restrictions, laws, and mysticism. She could only appeal to the love she felt for Naruto and Sasuke, the dim memory of the children they were, and the clear tragedies they had suffered. Looking at their troubled faces, Sakura's stomach turned, chills ran through her body, and she pursed her lips, making a decision. That had been the fleeting thought she had as they were led away from the war and opportunity. If there was a miracle to change everything, she would choose that path even if it tore the laws of space and time. It was the only thing she could do for them to end her suffering and the injustice she suffered. He looked at the Hokage with guilty eyes. It would be our decision to change the past, because even if you don't understand it, we need this opportunity. Tsunade snorted. It's inconceivable, she said furiously, slamming her chakra-charged fist into the ground, causing her to shatter to pieces. His two teammates shrugged and resigned. They were trained not to think too much about the delicate subject of time travelers, especially after the girl with pink hair demanded that they be removed from the conversation. The Hokage had agreed to the insulting request, and the most affected was Tsunade. After all, they were his students, part of his inner circle, and famous across the continent. In obvious lines, that meant preference and status, denigrated in favor of those brats. Jiraiya had taken it in the best possible way. He wasn't interested in knowing the future, and he wasn't so irresponsible that he wanted to play with it. Orochimaru shared his thoughts, although for different reasons. From his perspective, the future was something variable with too many dead ends to take into account. If the situation were reversed, perhaps he would pay more attention. We just have to calm down, he pointed out nonchalantly, forming seals of techniques he was learning. The old man will solve everything, and it will be like a bad story, Jiraiya supported, yawning. But do you really believe it then? What are they from the future? Two of those children have Jetsu from the Hyuga clan and the Uchiha clan, Orochimaru replied, pausing in his practice, his face still expressionless. It is most likely. There are no records of time travel, but it's not impossible. Your student is tangible proof of that. Certainly, Minato wielded a technique that used and distorted space-time, but only for himself. Jiraiya rubbed his chin. Fuck, those kids will pay me back, like my name is Tsunade Senju. He yelled, tomorrow we will make them talk, even if it is by force. Actually, she was more indignant than interested in her information. Jiraiya knew this, and that's why he allowed himself to tease him. Count on me, she exclaimed enthusiastically. That way I'll know if you finally agreed to have a date. He added in a morbid tone and a perverted look that made the Sanin look at him like a psychopath before hitting him, which sent him flying. You are unbearable, Jiraiya, she thundered, furious with a small vein throbbing on her forehead. I'll go see Dan. He stalked away, and just as he was out of sight, Jiraiya landed next to his friend. Orochimaru scowled at his pitiful state. Idiot, he said. He only received a groan of pain in response. Kushina frowned and looked askance at the teenager next to her. He wasn't a bad person. Well, he wasn't such a bad person, but he hadn't liked the old Sandame's order. He understood that the boy had no home and no way to return to his time at the moment, so he had to live somewhere, only that it had to be his apartment. She liked her privacy. Her correction was that he was insanely protective of her privacy. That little room was the only thing that really belonged to her, and she was repulsed by inviting someone outside of her circle of friends. Here it is, Databane. She gestured toward the door, an irritating surge of resignation running through her body. She could not disobey Sandame. The sky was already dark, a teasing sign of how long the conversation that she knew nothing about yet had gone on. She was annoyed, torn between kicking the boy's ass and forcing him to spit out the whole truth or holding back because Sandame's tired eyes had expressed hopeless knowledge. She opted to be neutral, at least for a while, and was vaguely amused by the thought that while she was taking in Naruto, idiot Fugaku had to deal with the creepy boy and Hayashi with Hana's doppelganger. The winner of the whole situation, without a doubt, was her former teacher. The Sandame had ordered her to accept the pink-haired girl, and Kushina smiled mischievously at the thought of the face Tsunade Senju would make when she was notified of the news. Naruto? She insisted when she saw that he kept looking inside from the door, a strange surprise in his blue eyes. Is something wrong, Databane? Naruto snapped out of his reverie and quickly shook his head, forming a smile and walking into the apartment with a bittersweet feeling in his stomach. Who would have thought that the Sandame had given him the home where his mother had lived? No one explained that detail to him, although no one told him that he was the son of the Yondaime and the former Jinchuriki of the Kaibai. It was a little different from what he remembered. His mother wasn't tidy either, but instead of being the figures of Sasuke and Kakashi full of shurikens and kunais as she left it before Pain's attack, there were the figures of Fugaku Uchiha and Hayashi Hyuga, also full of kunais and shurikens. Well, great minds think alike. Naruto felt a dose of genuine, bubbly amusement. He then noticed that his young mother was watching him. Thank you, Databeo, he mentioned somewhat enthusiastically. How old are you? Kushina asked with narrowed eyes, sitting down on the sofa in the small living room. 17, Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. It was strange to behave like this. He was usually more effusive, and he just couldn't help but feel self-conscious at the sharp violet gaze. He reminded her of the brief encounter they had had on a different plane. The only difference was that the roles were reversed, and it was his mother who was unaware on that occasion of the bond that united them. The anxiety that gnawed at him was not a good ingredient to combine with the shame. He was afraid of screwing up and saying something he couldn't erase. Very good. Kushina got up abruptly from the sofa and got so close to him that her nose practically touched his. Naruto backed away in alarm and blushed. His mother was very pretty, but she was also awe-inspiring. You're here because it's an order from the Hokage. Don't think it gives me any pleasure. I don't know you, and unless you and your friends open your mouth, I don't think we'll get along, he declared fiercely. It wouldn't be so unreasonable if it weren't for the thoughtful air that surrounded Minato. Certain veiled warnings echoed in his mind, words that the old priests of Uzashigakure murmured in the original Temple of the Masks. Things about time, space, and seals, knowledge that he could never finish learning due to the war and the destruction of all his clan. Kushina did not harbor excessive ambitions, but it was part of his character to meddle consciously or unconsciously in forbidden areas, so, putting aside his reasoning, she banished that memory. Still, she wasn't prepared for the whiplash of remorse that hit her as Naruto's jolly eyes narrowed with sadness and desolation. She reminded him of Minato automatically, of the same wet puppy look she gave to the strange melancholic moments of hers, probably because they shared the same eye color. The feeling, however, was different somehow, something more soft. He scratched his neck uncomfortably without being able to understand what the hell was happening to him. She wanted to back off and be a little more gentle, just a little, but her doorbell rang, and she pushed the thought away. Minato greeted her with a half-smile as soon as she opened the door, carrying 2 bags of ramen directly from Ikaraku. They were warm, and the smell made his mouth water. Ramen, she celebrated. Yeah, I missed you too, Minato teased as he entered the apartment. Kushina rolled her eyes. Hello, Naruto, she added kindly as soon as she saw him in the living room with that strange and indefinitely solitary air. Naruto started at his father's voice but recovered enough to smile weakly. He watched them go to the kitchen in a ridiculous chat about which bowl was bigger and more delicious and why Kushina should eat both without sharing, feeling exhausted and hurt. The primal emotion of seeing them before him weighed heavily. He practically trembled with pure happiness and longing, though he couldn't deny that the confusion and agony were taking their toll on him. She could still feel the blood of her enemies on her hands. She could hear the disgusting sound of the Chidori running through Kakashi-sensei's body. Even Tsunade's distant voice tormented her with the announcement of Jiraiya's death. Her teacher, the man who considered himself something like a father. He felt his eyes sting, and he put his hands to his face, trying not to give in to the abyss he saw in front of him, an abyss filled with all the dead from the war they had been fighting. A clearing of the throat snapped him back to reality. He looked up, somewhat confused, to find his father back with 2 bowls of steaming ramen. If he was curious after seeing him almost cry, he didn't show it. Do you like ramen, Naruto? The simple question touched a sore spot. Ramen, she repeated softly and blankly, blinking over and over as the bowl was placed in front of him. The scent that invaded his senses paralyzed him. When was the last time he was able to eat ramen? No, when was the last time he was able to even have a decent meal? In the war, he had barely enough willpower to smile and share the meager provisions, and she had practically forgotten the smell of his favorite dish. Everything was blurred by the smell of blood and rotting corpses. The smell of pork, soy sauce, and spices brought back precious memories of Tuchai and Iam, of Iruka-sensei, the 6 months he enjoyed with Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi as a team, and Yamato and Sai as well. His stomach. He writhed with hunger and rejection. If you don't want to, I'll eat it, Titebane. Kushina hurried out of the kitchen with her bowl of ramen, her red hair like a veil behind her. He didn't say he didn't want to, Minato said gracefully. Ah, but he hasn't said what he wants either, Kushina countered, sitting down on the threadbare rug that covered the living room. They both looked at Naruto at the same time, noticing that he was in tears. Does it smell that good? Kushina teased with a tone filled with pure sympathy. She wasn't comfortable with her secrecy, but the war and its repercussions were things she understood very well. The pain never went away, and a broken soul was never the same again. Naruto hastened to nod frantically, rubbing his face hard. Ramen always smells great, she muttered with a cracked voice. Of course, ramen is the best food in the world, Databane. Kushina squealed passionately. It is, Databeo. Naruto forced himself to yell that out loud with his eyes closed. He wasn't in the middle of a battlefield. He was in his home, he was in Konoha, he was in his childhood apartment, he was with his parents. Then stop whining and eat, the girl ordered, pointing her chopsticks at him. Food is life. Yeah, Minato watched the exchange with the shadow of a wistful smile. When Naruto reached for the chopsticks, he separated them and handed them over gently, his gaze filled with sad affinity. Naruto didn't know, but they understood what had happened like no other person. Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze were, after all, orphans. Pain and loneliness had forged them from an early age. Those terrible feelings united them and filled them with determination, yearning, and dangerous convictions. Itadekamasu, the 3 said at the same time, provoking a wild and nostalgic laugh. For a moment, they forgot about time travel, they forgot the doubts, the suspicions, and the discomfort. Minato and Kushina unconsciously sought to make Naruto feel better, as if he were a missing piece of the puzzle that was their lives, a hole so big that it hurt most of the time, a piece sunk under some gray tombstones in ruins in the sea. They had always longed for a family, and, for some bizarre reason, they felt that Naruto gave them the dreamy air of that concept snatched away by their enemies. The atmosphere was nice and sweet, but bitter too. Naruto finally allowed himself to smile, a wide and sincere smile filled with joy at sharing something as ordinary as dinner with his parents. It was the first time he shared something with them. Hidetamasu, Mom, Dad, she thought as she ate. I didn't understand many things. I didn't understand the reasons why something as bloody as war had to exist, because people killed each other instead of talking, instead of forgiving, etc. And I definitely couldn't understand why everything had turned out so terrible in the future after observing that past. But he would try for his parents, for his teachers, for his friends, and for all those who had died for his sake or at his hands. He would try to build a new future. His parents smiled at him, and for the first time in his sad and happy life, he really felt at home. With an exhausted sigh, Sakura ran her hands over the wounds on her arm, a faint green glow covering them. Sitting on the sofa in the messy living room of her teacher was the only means of distraction she had due to the angry look of honey on her face. She felt Tsunade Senju's eyes pierce her with disdain, mistrust, and a latent anger that shook her. She had never been good at accepting that her space was desecrated, but Sakura knew that perfectly well thanks to her years of training. Only she and Shizu Nissen had shared the dubious honor of entering that place, mainly to try to bring some order to the chaos that was the apartment. Thinking of that, Sakura vaguely wondered if she would see Shizune. How old would she be? 10 or 9? She wasn't sure. Facing her, Tsunade raised one of her thin eyebrows in pale shock, grudgingly acknowledging that the healing speed was high for a brat who looked so mundane. She had a strange talent that irritated her. Finding ninjas who could wield chakra with such finesse was very rare. So, he dragged out the words to make his position clear. You'll sleep here today. Sakura fidgeted and swallowed at the flat look her teacher was giving her. Yeah, Hokage-sama ordered that, Tsunade-sama. She had witnessed the scandal she caused when the order was given. Outraged was an understatement, but one more word from the Sandaime had silenced her as well as the rest. Until they found a way to return, it was best to blend into the life of the village without raising suspicion. If any of the other villages even suspected what happened, it would be a catastrophe. I have some rules, girl. If you don't obey them, you'll get out of here, my master's order or not. You understand? He nodded reluctantly, longing for the rough care Tsunade used to give him back in the day. After the death of her parents, she was the only remaining maternal figure. She was not the most exemplary, but she couldn't imagine anyone better for the position. It was difficult to stay there without that connection established through effort and time, an ingredient that had changed them both in many ways. Tsunade, in that moment, did not see her as more than the intruder who had just ruined her privacy, in addition to keeping a rather dangerous secret. Don't you dare interrupt my sleep, he pointed out sharply. I will get up whenever I feel like it, and I will not make any comment on it. If a man named Dan comes, you let him in and call me. If Jiraiya comes, close the door in his face and send Orochimaru a curse from me. He listed each irrational request with his fingers in a sarcastic tone. Don't think I'll cook either. If you're hungry, cook yourself or buy something. It's not my problem. And don't touch me, for my sake. Somewhat nervous from the last growl, Sakura nodded again, making a face. She removed her hands from her already healed arm and thought that her instructions would be easy to follow if there were no misunderstandings. She was feeling a little disappointed and hurt, but those emotions of hers wouldn't do him any good. She had to see for Naruto's well-being, especially through her eyes. She remembered the Rinnegan manifested in Akatsuki's pain and also remembered when that power was concentrated in her best friend. She wasn't sure how or why such a thing had happened, and she didn't know if Naruto had any answers either, but it was imperative to make sure he was okay. She also had to check on Hinata and Sasuke. It was a delicate subject that she cared more about in the past than her medical ethics. Yes, he had a lot to take care of. Excuse me, Tsunade-sama, he murmured. That. She was irritated. Did I take a bath? I have to check on Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke. Tsunade snorted and pointed in a listless gesture, keenly observing the slow, tense form of the little girl as she disappeared into the designated room. He felt a twisted satisfaction at his wariness, but also some annoyance. It was as if the girl knew exactly what her habits and her mood were. Drumming a finger on the arm of the sofa, she wondered if there would be some good or bad connection between them in the future, and what benefit would she derive from it. Inside the Hyuga clan grounds, Hayashi and Hisashi observed with raised eyebrows and a slight layer of discomfort the enthusiasm of Hana, who was going from one place to another looking through her things for something that could fit Hinata. The one she had was covered in blood, torn, and in such a sorry state that Hana had given up the idea of cleaning it up and returning it to its owner. Hana, restrained, Hayashi requested quietly. For the first time, I agree with Hayashi, you're being a bit exaggerated, Hisashi opined, looking suspiciously at the shower of fabrics that covered the floor of the normally immaculate room. After speaking with the council, Hana obtained permission to take care of her peculiar guest. The pressure of being under the gaze of the Hyuga clan shredded the girl's nerves, and for that very reason, she decided to do without her servants. Hayashi and Hisashi both thought it was an unnecessary move, especially after looking at the chaos she was creating. Hana ignored them as best she could, too busy with her job. She pushed more clothes aside, wondering with some bewilderment when and how her closet had grown so large. She didn't touch the ceremonial kimonos for obvious reasons, though she did examine a few light pieces with a concentrated pout. She pressed the soft fabric against her body, shaking her head and absently humming something about her chest is bigger than hers. Hana saw the shocked expressions of her fiancé and his friend at her words. When she concentrated too much, she ignored the rest. Makoto used to say that it was a terrible flaw, although, in Hisashi's opinion, that was a flaw that she and Kushina had as well. In general, the younger of the twins always had the misfortune of witnessing and hearing intimate or embarrassing things. It was to die for. Hisashi gave him a venomous look, as if he could tell what was going through his mind. Hisashi clucked at her irritably, indignant that she blamed him for events he described as traumatizing, like the memorable day when Tsume decided to talk about girls' sizes while he was around her friends. "Stop looking at her," Hisashi hissed jealously. "I'm not looking at her, Mr. Insecure," he replied in a low growl. He had Miss Yumi, and his fidelity was protected by both the affection and the fear that the young woman aroused in him. Hana gave them a sharp look as soon as she heard their voices rise, frowning with a tender severity that was sometimes terrifying, though most of the time it just made them squirm guiltily. "I found something." He pointed to a lavender dress. It was quite light and loose, it would surely fit Hinata's body. "So?" Hisashi asked sullenly. "Go away," she ordered bluntly, absorbed in the sound of water splashing in the shower. "That?" The twins protested at the same time, sure they had misheard. "Let them go," Hana repeated, hands on hips. "You will scare her. Hinata-san has been through a tough situation, and she needs to rest." He gave them a stubborn and rude gesture as he pointed to the immaculate door, a gesture that screamed so much at Kushina Uzumaki that they both cursed the rowdy redhead for such an unceremonious send-off. Hana had been molded within the clan as a refined, sweet, kind, calm, and submissive lady, the perfect and required wife for the clan leader. Much of that elegance of hers remained in her, but also a part of her naivete had been twisted, whether for better or worse, neither of them was sure. Hisashi loved Kushina, she was one of her best friends, but at that moment she couldn't help but accept that she was a bad influence, period. Accepting that they could not disobey, they shuffled out of the room as their only rebuke. Hana didn't want to throw them out like that, just the doubt she had since she saw Hinata persisted in her mind. It wasn't a bad thing, of course. She lifted her dress between her pale hands, and a sweet smile drew on her delicate face at the almost certain certainty that this girl was her blood and her flesh. She couldn't ask directly, the Hokage had forbidden it, but she was far from caring. Hinata was already drying herself when Hana entered the bathroom. Her shower had relaxed her, and she looked healthier than she had before, even though the bruises and scrapes lingered on her pale skin. She accepted her dress with a slight shudder at the presence of her young mother, still unable to fully accept that strange fantasy of hers. With some embarrassment, she took off her clothes and began to change, a little reticent about the attention she was receiving. "How did you do that to yourself?" Hana inquired curiously, pointing to the scar she had on her chest. Hinata winced. "I." She blushed faintly, bringing her shaking hands to her chest. Her mother's lavender gaze conveyed sweetness and kindness, feelings that burned hotter than the wound that pain once gave her. "It was my carelessness. I was trying to protect a friend," she whispered, the lingering sadness of the war and that failed confession taking their toll. On the battlefields, she did not have time to think too much about those words that she threw as a farewell, certain of her death. In front of her mother, even if she was a lovely young version of the cold and contemptuous woman who had raised her, she couldn't help but remember. It was not the time or the place, but that scene pulsed vividly. Hana subtly tilted her head, hearing the melancholy in her voice. "It must have been a deep wound," he commented without probing further. He didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable or miserable, otherwise there would have been no scar. "Sakura-san did everything she could," he said in a gentle voice. "Tsunade-sama can review you. She is the best medic nin that exists in Konoha." Hinata smiled indulgently, pulling on her dress. "Tsunade-sama, Sakura-san. Let either of them check me out. It's the same." Hana didn't understand, but she preferred not to insist. Keeping aesthetics within the ninja world wasn't very important. Instead, she held out her hands in a somewhat enthusiastic, girlish gesture to lead her into her messy room. She didn't notice her guest's expression of wariness and pain and her eagerness to offer him some comfort. "You don't have to worry about a thing, Hinata," he said, omitting the honorific and pushing her onto the soft bed. "I will make sure that your stay here is pleasant." Thank you." Hinata hesitated a bit when she saw her pick up a brush and settle behind her to comb her hair. "It's not necessary." She choked on the words without wanting to, shocked by that affectionate gesture of hers. Hana shook her head helpfully, humming an ancient tune as she brushed her battered hair. She was sweet and gentle, beyond what Hinata was used to. From a very young age, she had been subjected to brutal training, and when she was no match for her, her father removed her servants and left her with only Ko as her only connection to her clan. After the Chunin exams, she regained some status, but her childhood was gone. She could not recover what was lost, that dark stage that weighed on her. Even so, life had been generous, and she was grateful for the new opportunity. But her mother was a different matter. Shivered a faint spasm that had little to do with the weather. His brush stopped for a few seconds, and then he resumed its movement, up, down, up, down. "Maybe you should cut it," Hana said after a few seconds of tense silence. "It's the best with bad hair and bad memories. Everything goes away in one fell swoop." Her voice was almost a coo, at least that's what Kushina-chan says. "When it grows up again, it will be stronger and more beautiful." A faint blush covered Hinata's cheeks, both from excitement and hysterical confusion. It was the first time in her life that she had heard anything meaningful from her mother. He had watched her from the cage tower, beautiful, young, and full of candor. It was unbearable to know that it had not been an illusion and that Hana Hyuga was really a nice and loving young woman, happy and radiant. In the future, she would be a shadow, a ghost of that sweet girl who brushed her hair. Hinata. The echo of the past was so strong and terrifying. The woman between the sliding doors watched her with disdain and disappointment. Her light and shadows made her look terrifying, ethereal, and terrible. She remembered the fear running through him and the sweat running down her back at that figure of hers. You were born to be the leader of the clan, not to become a useless piece. She trains and continues to train, and please don't let us down. Despite their relationship, Hinata cried when she lost her. She now felt that he had never known her, that she had died not once but twice, and she never knew it. How old are you? 17, he answered softly, twisting his fingers eagerly. His father never spoke his mother's name again once the ceremony was over. When the crate sank into the ground, he closed his eyes for a few seconds, then opened them and turned, never to return. Hanabi left flowers on the anniversary of her death and hummed mournful and joyful songs, depending on her mood. Natsu was always with her, Hinata wasn't, and Hinata didn't come back either. Because she didn't know. You are young. Hana Hyuga's voice was melancholic, very young for a war. It wasn't a real criticism. The ninja world lived on wars. It was its essence in its pure and raw state. They may have dwindled since the founding of the villages, but they had never vanished. They were at the gates of another, in fact, and those called ninjas were ageless. Not so much. Hinata swallowed uneasily, trying to follow the thread of the conversation. And it was for the greater good. It's always for the greater good. Hana's smile was a grimace. No, it really was. Hinata thought it important to explain and make people understand that something wonderful had arisen amid so much hardship. She clung to her mother's hand with trembling fingers and twinkling eyes. We had to protect someone. All the nations came together for that goal. Hana blinked in bewilderment, abandoning the brush at the gentle pressure of Hinata's fingers. All nations, she repeated in an incredulous tone. It was an implausible thing to believe. Nations were tearing apart internally and externally, and coming together, even briefly, was too good a utopia to even imagine. I don't know if I should be excited or terrified. Finally, she said frankly. As the fiancée of the heir to the Hyuga clan, she lived more protected than necessary, and, even so, she understood that a union of such magnitude could only take place for something extreme. She was not encouraging. Hinata nodded weakly, understanding. Remembering Pain's magnificence when he rampaged through Konoha made her knees weak. The war nauseated him. Tobai and Kabuto, along with the Edo Tensei army, covered most of his daily nightmares, but he desperately wanted and could hold on to the only hope they had. Enemy nations becoming allies, the cages fighting shoulder to shoulder, and national unrest becoming the past between the trenches. Kiba joked that it took the end of everything they knew to achieve such a thing. Shino silently agreed with him, and Hinata as well. Despite the stale air of blood and death, there was more than pain and destruction, even if that, too, had begun to fade just before this trip. Was it a blessing or a curse? Hinata stared at her, the younger version of her mother, with a knot in her stomach and apprehension in her soul, and told herself that perhaps it was a mixture of both. Go to sleep, Hinata. When you wake up, I have a surprise for you. She felt the echo of the affectionate kiss her mother placed on her forehead, a feather-light touch, that day before her death. She was radiant, her cheeks flushed with blush, and her hands shaking with pure emotion. The touch of the kimono fabric, the fragrance of the perfume, the beautiful smile, all kept coming like torment. She had wanted to forget it. She buried it herself in the merciless roar of training and the years, but she had risen again. Because, that appalling change. Why? She didn't realize she was crying until Hana stepped forward and ran the back of her hand over her face, brushing away the tears with a sad look. She wondered if it was her imagination, thinking of the mirror reflection of her looking at her. Natsu-san says that you look a lot like her. Hanabi narrowed her eyes distantly, standing imposingly in the blazing sun, dripping with sweat and pure victory. Hinata gasped on her knees, her head bowed, with a bittersweet feeling at her defeat and relief at her sister's strength. Hanabi would never have to go through the same thing as her because they were different. Do you think so, Nisama? There are no photographs or portraits, and I don't remember her. No, I don't think there's a resemblance. She was strong. Hanabi looked at her impassively, with the same kind of expression her father always wore. You are strong, simply, your strength is different. Maybe it was. Hanabi had a strange wisdom even in her youth. Was love a force? Hinata had experienced very little about love, but it was all she had to offer aside from her wavering determination. Okay, you can cry. Hana pulled her close warmly, closing her eyes. I will be with you. Forever, she asked breathlessly, letting the sour comfort, the pain, and the shock take over. She forgot the prudence and calm that she had tried so hard to achieve and snuggled into her mother's lap as if she were a child. And she cried. Always was a strong, intimate word. Hana lifted her head and stared at the ceiling as she ran her fingers restlessly through his hair, humming again. She had always been good at learning beautiful melodies. The council and her parents said it was unnecessary, but Hayashi liked it, and it was enough to keep his useless talent going. The music vibrated in the soul, that was her credo. Even as Hinata started to calm down, she didn't stop. Forever. She remembered the way she had been looked at hours ago when she had introduced herself, that mixture of wonder, delight, and horror, as if she were a ghost. In the shape of her chin, Hana saw Hayashi. In the rest of her, she saw herself. But the Hyuga genes had her particularities, so she had doubts. She no longer had them. His hand stilled as Hinata's breathing began to catch up. Rest. Hinata whispered something as sleep overcame her. Thank you, Mom. She was too sleepy to notice what she'd said, and even though it was already clear to her, Hana was still startled. She had read that somewhere, and she would never cease to be amazed at the way they could be used and affect people. Hinata Hyuga was their daughter. The future she came from was too dark and tragic, and they probably weren't prepared to face it. The Uchiha grounds did not have the magnificence of the Hyuga. The traditional little houses were more modest and crowded, and only the main one stood out from the rest and was not too grand except for its location. Also, the Uchiha neighborhood was full of life. It was a little bit more of the village despite having an implicit limit established and the gate painted with the familiar red-white fan. In an almost gloomy silence, Sasuke had observed that limit before following his parents, suspicious of the serenity and glory that he had never breathed. Even the steps taken to that place were wrong. The Uchiha clan was located in the farthest and most forgotten part of the village in his memory, and the remains that remained after Pain's attack only witnessed his judgment. What was up with that ridiculous situation? The cobbled streets were different. The little houses and the people who passed by gave them curious glances too. Nothing resembled the gloomy atmosphere that, in his childhood, he had confused with some incarnation of greatness. So she couldn't evoke the scattered bodies and the blood staining the place that night of the full moon. The image of him was distorted so strongly that it infuriated him, as if the future was absurd. When they stopped in front of the main house, Mikoto said, "You will live here. Fugaku and I will take care of you, Sasuke-kun." The gleeful chatter of the young woman who would become his mother didn't fool him one bit. There was something carefree yet also menacing in his soft words. Sasuke frowned as his only reaction. Her mother had always been respectful, even when she only wore an apron instead of a kunai, yet he never realized that even the severity he knew of her was only a shadow of how intimidating he could be. He bristled subconsciously, responding perfectly to the honeyed fake smile she bestowed on him. Fugaku eyed him harshly and with displeasure, as if he thought that both his fiancée's hospitality and kindness were wasted on him. "We're in luck today," Mikoto added, high-fiving her palms resolutely. "Fugaku and I used to eat alone. It's a bit depressing. But you are here, and Abido-kun will come too. It will be a profitable dinner. Will you come today?" Fugaku turned to look at her irritably. "You didn't tell me anything." "My mistake." Mikoto entered without giving more priority to his anger. "Mikoto, Fugaku," she imitated as they walked through the wooden corridors, lacing their fingers behind her back. "Don't go overboard." "Good thing you get it, honey," he teased pointedly, casting an amused glance over her shoulder. Then she switched her attention to Sasuke and beckoned to him. "You have to take a bath. Come with me." It was not a suggestion. Sasuke followed her. An hour later, after a bath and a change of clothes grudgingly lent to him by Fugaku, Sasuke felt totally out of place in the sprawling, colorful kitchen. Mikoto was cooking, apparently happy and distracted, leaving him and Fugaku to fend for themselves while they waited for dinner. The echo of the past flickered faintly in his confused brain, the apathy hard to maintain as he thought about whether he was dead or if it was all really happening. With his hands on his knees and sitting in an awkward position, he watched with suspicion and bitter melancholy the ritual of his childhood. His father wasn't reading a newspaper, he was too busy giving him resentful looks, and his mother wasn't so soft and motherly, but there was a nice touch to the scene that had been taken from him with violence and blood. Itachi was missing, of course. Itachi would always be the piece that would never fit into the past or the future because he was different from them, but that didn't mean he didn't belong there. He blinked slowly, some wicked placidity slithering like a snake between his bruised and sore muscles. It wasn't his house. It didn't look anything like the place where he lived in his childhood. Even so, she vaguely recognized the feeling that washed over him. Team 7 and Taka once offered a shadow of that homely relief, but none of them could or should replace those moments. The clan symbol on his mother's dark t-shirt brought him dark pride. He was serious when he said that he could, for the good of his family, dismiss his revenge. Konoha was part of the Uchiha clan because of his magnificence, and if that were real, Sasuke would forgive the pathetic and insignificant lives of its hypocritical inhabitants to see his family free and happy. He wouldn't forget, he never would, but he could play the same cheap farce they loved so much. Mikoto came over with trays laden with freshly prepared onigiri and steaming cups of tea. The aroma of steamed rice filled the small room, causing Fugaku to stop frowning and his stiffness to soften. "You're so predictable." Mikoto laughed fondly, giving him a soft look. "Must I bribe you all your life with food?" "It won't work every time," Fugaku assured, and his mouth stretched slightly into something resembling a smile. It was almost as if they had forgotten that they had a stranger among them. Romantic affection was never something Sasuke cared about. His parents never let their walls down around him, always remaining the most imposing and stern people in his household. He didn't know exactly what to feel. He wasn't even sure if he felt anything in particular, be it embarrassment, discomfort, or curiosity. "Love," Tobai had whispered mockingly during the war. "The Uchiha clan is a love clan, Sasuke." Whoa, she made a face. It was then that Abido appeared. It came like a hurricane, running carelessly between the aisles to end up falling on the kitchen threshold. He was up almost instantly, brushing off his clothes and adjusting a pair of orange goggles on his head, a stupid smile crossing his battered face. Sasuke didn't know all the members of his clan, impossible with so many ninjas and civilians, but he didn't remember any of them like him either. He totally disagreed with the haughty or serene demeanor of all those he saw, as if he were oblivious to the Uchiha name. Not even Itachi was upset like that. Sorry for the delay, Fugaku-sama, Mikoto-san. She howled without any sense of propriety. She was helping. I didn't ask for explanations, Fugaku cut in, exasperated. Come in and sit down, Abido. Yeah, the boy said happily, trotting more than walking to join them at the little table. Sasuke remained grimly silent, trying to figure out if his presence was important or not in order to remember it. Soon, he found himself being watched with curiosity and surprise. Who are you? His name is Sasuke. He will be staying in the main house for a while by order of the Hokage, Mikoto explained kindly, ignoring Fugaku's snort at the direct question. Sasuke-kun, this is Abido. Oh, do you want some candy? It was the most bizarre version of nice to meet you Sasuke had gotten in a long time. And he had shared 6 long and painful months with Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi. He eyed the shiny wrapped candy and frowned. She caught her mother's eye and knew she had to take it. She did, then set the candy aside, feeling like she'd done something ridiculous. You shouldn't eat a lot of candy, Abido. Mikoto ruffled his hair affectionately. You need nutrients and real energy. Taiyaki is too easy on you, Fugaku hissed grudgingly. Minato too, apparently. I don't eat too many, Abido swore instantly. I give some away. I have more. Do you want? There was a chorus of no. That was more exasperated than angry, and it made Abido rub the back of his neck. The interaction pricked Sasuke's skin in a way that made him feel more out of place than he had at first. He watched the whole time as the boy smeared rice and tea down his cheeks while he shared ridiculous anecdotes that made his father snort in an almost childish way and his mother laugh genuinely. On occasion, she noticed his silence and distant posture and encouraged him to eat something, but Sasuke had lost his little hunger. As a bystander, he thought of Itachi, the brother he loved, hated, and never understood, and that no one actually understood. She imagined him as the acclaimed genius boy she envied, the lonely child in whom his father placed the weight and duty of an entire clan because before his son was his heir. She never thought it was something strange. Sasuke had longed for that feeling of confidence and pride. He didn't see the lack of love. Itachi must have felt very lonely. And what better way to alleviate that loneliness than to find a reason to exist? For Sasuke, revenge was everything. For Itachi, it was the sacrifice. The apartment that was given to him after the massacre flashed in his mind, that small, dark, and gloomy place that he hated, even though it was the only place he had. And not having a place to belong was annoying. Sasuke had learned that. The destruction of Konoha at the hands of pain made him a little sentimental about something, and although he hated that weakness, he also recognized it. And that made it more sour to understand that Itachi had a certain logic in his absurd plan. Perhaps, he told himself sourly, he would never have chosen that path. Not if you had given him some attention, as you are doing with that child. Was it youth? The lack of problems with the village? Sasuke clenched his fists on his legs, numb with subtle envy. Hate was not built out of nothing, and neither was distance. I'll be back tomorrow. Abido got up as soon as he finished. He had some grains of rice on his face. Mikoto took them off, laughing. Thank you. Better not come back. Fugaku muttered cheekily before Mikoto punched him in the ribs. Sasuke didn't bother to respond to her dismissal, remaining offline until an onigiri blocked his field of vision. He blinked in bewilderment. You didn't eat anything, Mikoto pointed out, offering the only onigiri that had survived Abido and Fugaku. Come on, you need it. He didn't need it, but he received it clumsily. He resented it, yet he could never deny her mother anything, not when the last sight he had of her was of her body lying lifeless on the bloody floor of her home. He did not attend the funeral, he did not have the mental capacity to do so. Although it was a magnificent funeral, that's how the people who murmured when he walked to the academy described it, because Sasuke had missed the lesson that burying your entire family also had a category, magnificent or pitiful. Killed by their own son by those disgusting people, Sasuke stared at his mother, expressionless. She was watching him too. It's deplorable. You're not very talkative, you know. She smiled wryly, as if she had caught his thoughts. Eat. Between her fingers, the rice felt sticky. His stomach turned as he bit down, destroying the perfect cylinder shape his mother's hands had built. The taste of the past was nauseating, but she swallowed, wondering if that Akaka onigiri meant anything after all this time. He remembered how he used to get excited to the point of being scolded by his father when his mother made that dish. Sasuke wished so badly that he could taste something other than blood, ashes, and hate. It's not very good, apparently. Mikoto didn't care. Fugaku loves them. I used to like him, and so did Itachi. It was the only connection we had with him. It's pretty good, Fugaku growled, giving Sasuke a nasty look. You only say that so I don't complain, Mikoto snorted, a mischievous little smile on her lips, but you won't run away from helping me the first few months, both in the kitchen and with the paperwork. Fugaku rolled his eyes, and Mikoto laughed more. There wasn't much joy in his laugh, it was more like a tender melancholy. He devoted himself to watching Sasuke devotedly as he ate with exhausting slowness, as if she were encouraging him not to give up. Sasuke looked away after a few seconds, unable to bear that intensity. "It looks like you're done and tired," Mikoto added, getting up. "I'll take you to your room." Before Fugaku could protest, she grabbed Sasuke's hand and forced him up with a force that betrayed her appearance. "You have to talk to Taeki," Mikoto told her fiancé without further ado. "If factions will start to move, we can't let them discover anything compromising. The Hokage trust us to keep this secret." He made a disjointed sound, looking at Sasuke for the first time with something close to uncertainty. When speaking of factions, they entered a muddy field. Mikoto's fingers were thinner, just as rough and less warm than Sasuke remembered, and he would have wanted to focus on the forgotten sensation of holding her hand and being led wherever, but he couldn't ignore the words. Factions. He had a fleeting memory of Itachi kneeling before other members of the clan, apologizing after attacking them over the interrogation arising from Shisui's mysterious death. "You don't know enough, do you?" Tobai had given her a rather obvious look of pity, despite the Daela mask. "You were never raised as a ninja belonging to a clan. It's quite unfortunate that the sole survivor of the Uchiha clan is nothing more than an ignorant child." He knew that there were positions of power within the clan earned by personal or inherited achievements on the battlefield, and that, to a lesser extent, the purity of blood counted as well. But why were they supposed to group into factions? And above all, did it matter? Sasuke blinked languidly, plagued by irritation at the ignorance he carried. "You'll have to forgive this. I don't know what it's like in the future, but the clan and the village don't have a very stable relationship," Mikoto said, continuing to drag him through the halls. Sasuke had no choice but to follow her. "It is best that you do not approach anyone while you are here. It's our clan." For the first time, Sasuke answered. His voice was stiff. Why did they defend the village so hard that it would turn its back on them? They did not know what would happen in the future, but they were clear that there was a gap. "Oh, so if you can talk," Mikoto replied sardonically, looking over her shoulder at him, "you mean we should just rely on the clan? That thinking is a bit biased, isn't it? Is Kanohe impartial?" she asked instead, with a sneer. Mikoto slowly stopped. Right at the end of that corridor, a lone door was ajar, and some light filtered through. Sasuke saw the shadows on his mother's face as if they were the monsters Shisui once told him about. What had he said they embodied? Fear, pride, and anger. Ninjas didn't need feelings, but they were the only burden they had. "Is this thought yours, or Fugaku's, or the council's?" When she asked it herself, Mikoto sounded very tired. Sasuke took a moment to react, and his hermetic expression broke, turning into almost childish bewilderment. Mikoto took a step forward, and the light that had stained his face, making it look eerie, was left behind. Sasuke noticed her dark circles under her black eyes. Even in that dim darkness, he could see her perfectly. Itachi's eyes could see everything. As the question caught in her throat at the look she received. There was something about her that was far from the harshness and suspicion of before, compassion. Her stomach turned. He didn't want her pity, he wasn't even sure if he wanted her love. "As," she repeated. Her smile was like ice. "You should look in a mirror, you have it written on your face." Mikoto had been suspicious of her ever since the Hokage ordered her and Fugaku to look after her well-being. Only when Abido arrived at the main house did those suspicions become a reality. "You're not her," Sasuke murmured weakly as Mikoto took another step forward and cupped his cheeks hard. There was no tenderness, affection, or care in his stiff fingers. "I know." Mikoto smiled indulgently. He could look at him the rest of the night, and his maternal instincts would not surface. What was, after all, a mother's love? His had almost been sold to the Uchiha clan. He didn't know if he would love that child as she deserved, probably not if it was that shell that he could crack at a little affection. "I want you to know something, even if it sounds like a sorry excuse to justify the unjustifiable. My children and Fugaku's are supposed to grow up in a loving environment. I was sure we could make a difference, but you are living proof to the contrary." And it had to be a bloody understatement. Mikoto was afraid to find out what awaited her. "I don't know if you've heard, Sasuke-chan." She tugged on his cheek as if he were the child she barely managed to raise, but love consumes the Uchiha. Maybe it's something we unconsciously seek, or maybe it's fate. I don't know, it doesn't matter, it just happens. Don't let that love consume you too. Sasuke made a strangled noise. Why did they reduce everything to that very, very prim word? There was nothing but loathing inside of him. The Uchiha clan is a love clan, Sasuke. Tobai laughed as he stretched out his arms on top of that cliff. Beneath him, his army marched without pause, white dots that were like a plague without beginning or end. Show your love too. Don't let the non-Uchiha live. He just wanted to immortalize the Uchiha by destroying the rest. Did I have to call it love? Ridiculous. Everything is ridiculous in this world. Mikoto pulled at him, causing him to bury his face in his shoulder. He ran his fingers through his hair, staring coldly at nothing. Sasuke didn't react to the gesture, despite being in a painful and vulnerable position. The internal fights are ridiculous, the wars are ridiculous, our existence is ridiculous. Why do we have to defend life with death? Doesn't that make everything stupid? But we are humans, Sasuke-chan, and apparently it is our nature to be stupid as much as it is to want to be loved and to love. Mikoto didn't complain when Sasuke's hands closed on her shoulders with such force that it became painful. He was trembling, and though he was taller, he seemed so small that it sank into her heart. I'm here, even if I'm not her yet, he murmured, trying to replicate the sweetness of Fugaku's mother. She felt out of place, but she clung to that boy with everything in her. If it couldn't be in the future, at least in the past, she could do something for him. Naruto groaned once more in pain. The pink-haired girl just rolled her eyes impatiently, spreading her palms out as green chakra emanated from them, healing the countless wounds Tsunade had left on the blonde. Stop moving, Baka. Sakura grabbed his wrists and forced him to stay still. She needed to hurry to heal him before they noticed her, and as soon as her teacher finished beating her for insulting him, he began to heal, which was not strange since the Kaibai's chakra always did that. But now they were in the past, and it was best that no one knew yet that Naruto was the Kaibai's Jinchuriki, at least not until they knew exactly what they were going to do. However, Kushina had noticed it, and of course, if she was the Jinchuriki of the Kaibai. It's strange, it heals fast, too much, even more than me. What do you think it is, Kaibai-chan? First, stop calling me Kaibai-chan, you brat. It bothers me. Why do you think I do it? And yes, it's strange, if it weren't for the fact that I'm inside you, I would swear that I can feel my chakra from inside that brat. Mine-chan. Tsunade, for her part, once she finished beating that Naruto guy for calling him old, she wasn't old. She flung herself at Minato again, cuddling him and showering him with kisses, oblivious to Minato's face, almost blue from drowning. The poor blonde was more than used to the suffocating hugs of the Sanin. He had received them since he was a child, although that did not mean that he liked them. By Kami, Tsunade was holding him too tight, almost crushing her bones. But at that very moment, the rapid healing of that boy also caught his attention. The only one who healed it fast and without the need for a medical ninja was Kushina, and only because she had the fox inside her. He had seen her since she became the recipient of the Kaibai. It was not possible that this child was a Jinchuriki, was it? Pity, Sakura-chan. Naruto whimpered as, moving again angrily, Sakura broke a bone. Shut up, Naruto. She silenced him with a withering look. This is your fault. Why did you insult Tsunade-sama? Minato frowned. There it was again, that girl seemed to get confused all the time in the way she called Tsunade-sama. Don't call Tsunade Shishu that. Those words. At that moment, Minato was certain that Sakura Haruno would be Tsunade's student in the future, the only one who had apparently mastered hermetic nin techniques and her amazing strength. So it was obvious that Tsunade had become Godame Hokage since she had claimed that she was a student of the Hokage. Amazing. At that time, the only candidate for the next Hokage was Orochimaru. Tsunade wasn't even interested in the position, besides. Who was Yondaime Hokage? Because of one thing, he was sure if Tsunade was the fifth Hokage, then the fourth had not given up her place or died of old age. That's it. Sakura got up minutes later, huffing and puffing. Naruto did too, but crying childishly and rubbing his arms and legs that Tsunade had broken half an hour before. Sakura was no stranger to the scrutiny of the redhead or the future Hokage. She already knew that the two of them were Naruto's parents, and when she found out, she scolded herself. Naruto was like a copy of her father. She didn't understand how nobody had recognized him in the future, or maybe they had just made mistakes. Fools. In Naruto's life, there were so many loose ends. You went too far, grandmother. The blonde jumped up, pointing a finger at him. Kushina, Minato, and Sakura rolled their eyes. That one didn't learn with blows. The Sanin released Minato instantly, turning to look at Naruto with a psychotic look and clenching her knuckles. Enough. The pink-haired girl knocked him to the ground, making him whimper. Now I have to check your eyes, Baka. The Rinnegan has hurt you. Huh, why do you say that, Sakura-chan? Naruto asked, confused and unaware of the surprise that overwhelmed the other three when they found out that he possessed the legendary jutsu. Because I am a doctor, you are not. He raised his hands and placed them on his friend's sparkling blue eyes, emanating a large amount of chakra. No one other than Nagato had possessed the Rinnegan before, so he had no chance of knowing if he could do anything to prevent Naruto from getting hurt. Although she quickly noticed that the damage was not insignificant, which relieved her, perhaps all she needed was training to handle it well. Once it happened, the pink-haired girl got up from the ground, lifting him up as well. She pursed her lips slightly at the mention of the latter, but she pushed those thoughts from her mind before she was filled with resentment. I have to check on them and heal the damage they have from the war. He deserves it, Titebeo, Naruto muttered with his hands behind his head. He then closed his eyes, waiting for Sakura's blow to defend Sasuke, a blow that never came. He watched in surprise as Sakura's jade eyes were slightly clouded with resentment. Of course he deserves it, the girl muttered under her breath, but Sensei wouldn't have wanted that. Tsunade stepped forward, fed up that they were ignoring her. Enough, brats, she yelled furiously. And can you explain to me that this brat has the Rinnegan? Sakura turned around, upset. She had almost forgotten about them. Minato and Kushina looked at them in surprise. They couldn't believe that Naruto really had the legendary jutsu, which they only knew was possessed by the creator of ninjutsu, Rikodo Senin. Impossible, Minato muttered in a daze. Wow, Titebane, Kushina said just as surprised, looking Naruto up and down. You must be very, very strong. He's the hero of Konoha, said Sakura proudly, but there are things that we still can't explain to you, at least not right now. Besides, we're in a hurry, we have to go get. Hinata is asleep, and so is Sasuke, Kushina informed him nonchalantly. Hana and Miko-chan called to tell me a few minutes ago. If you want to check on him, Pinky, you have to go early tomorrow. Sakura, my name is Sakura, the pink-haired girl muttered. Yeah, hey, do you have something to do with Takeshi Haruno? Kushina asked, raising her eyebrows. Sakura nodded. Yes, it's my father. Because, Minato, Kushina, and Tsunade looked at him in surprise. Oh, damn pervert. How dare you spy on me, Takeshi Haruno? With those screams in the morning, Sakura woke up sleepily. She didn't understand what was going on, she just wanted to sleep a little more. She barely remembered what had happened the day before when she, along with Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke, had traveled to the past in an incredible way. She tossed in bed, ready to go back to sleep when, the fall, Haruno. He fell suddenly to the ground before the screams that were getting louder. Haruno, forgetting the dream, she instantly got up to leave the room and open the door of her teacher's apartment. She blinked in disbelief as she saw two slightly familiar people pass in front of her. The girl with pink hair a shade darker than hers, barely dressed and with a broom in her hand, and a boy with brown hair and jade eyes, both looked about her age. Ha ha ha, the brunette avoided the broom for a few centimeters, looking at the girl with perverse amusement. Who wants to spy on you, Akemi? Flat chest. Akemi glared at him, running faster after him. Sakura's mouth was open in shock. Those were they her parents? That's why, said a mocking voice behind her. He turned to see Tsunade just woken up and disheveled, although she looked more amused than angry for having been woken up at 8 in the morning by Akemi and Takeshi's screams after all the village had already gotten used to it. The blonde inspected her again while she smirked. You know, brat, it shows that you are their daughter. Who'd say? If they fight all day, beggar, she looked with interest through the open door. You know, if she were a ninja, I'm sure she would be an excellent student. Sure, if she were a ninja, she would have that character and have good chakra control. He shrugged, taking a jar of milk out of the refrigerator and opening it to drink the white liquid. For her part, the pink-haired woman quickly closed the door and fled in the direction of her room. She didn't know if it would be good to tell the Sanin that she was her student in the future. In other words, they wanted to change some things, yes, but the ones that suited them. And she wasn't too sure that it would bring benefits. Once Tsunade finished drinking the milk, she threw the bottle in the trash, repeating her last words. She did not understand why she had said that to the pink girl. She only had Kushina, Hana, and Makoto as students. She had not accepted anyone else. But he admitted that Akemi, with the character she was handling, resembled Kushina, and she liked that about her character. Although Sakura Haruno had Akemi's character, she was a ninja, and she had excellent chakra control. It was like what she just said. She was an excellent medical ninja. Was she? Oh. With the first rays of the sun, Hinata stood up, blinking confusedly. It wasn't until she saw her mother come in, humming a song and carrying a breakfast tray, that she remembered everything. He smiled sheepishly when she beamed at him. Good morning, Hinata. She put the tray on the bed before giving him an effusive hug. Hinata, somewhat surprised, hugged him back, feeling insecure when feeling how his mother hugged him with such affection. He did not remember anything of that facet in the future, really, despite everything once they returned to the future. And if they did not manage to change anything, he would suffer a lot, realizing that everything would have an end, but the best thing was to take advantage. Even if it was for those moments, he wanted to spend some time with his mother. I brought you breakfast so you wouldn't bother going out, Hana commented absently, pretending to look at her fingernails so she wouldn't let her daughter know that she had noticed tears in her eyes. Hinata nodded weakly, blinking away any trace of tears. At that moment, some noises were heard. The older Hyuga sighed and rolled her eyes. But stay away, Hayashi Baka, Titebane. No, Uzumaki, I don't feel like it. Get out of here, Tomato. I'll castrate you, bastard. And then a series of screams of pain and fury. Hinata heard everything with a drop on her head. Naruto's mother was scary. Don't worry, Hinata, eat. Kushina will take at least another 10 minutes to hit Hayashi, and if Fugaku arrives, then it will take half an hour there, she commented as if it were the most normal Hana. And it was. Oh, Fugaku frowned. Makoto smiled charmingly, finishing preparing breakfast and putting it on the tray to take him to her very handsome son's room, ignoring her boyfriend and forgetting that she also had to serve him breakfast. But when she remembered, she entered the room where Sasuke was looking out the window and wistfully shrugged nonchalantly. Fugaku was not one-armed. If he wanted to eat, then let him help himself, right? It was not his employee, Sasuke-chan. He greeted him in a honeyed tone. The black-haired man turned surprised. His mother had really come with his breakfast. He had been so distracted that he hadn't even noticed. His mother looked at him, waiting for his reaction. She didn't know what to say or do. She stopped showing expressions a long time ago. HMP. Makoto frowned at him, irritated by that monosyllable, thank you. The Uchiha smiled dazzlingly. Kaya, they were so cute. She jumped on her son to hug him. My son, you had to be, Jojo. Kushina will be jealous when she sees that my son is handsome. Sasuke looked at him, almost scared and incredulous. His mother was acting too weird and annoying. But what are you waiting for? Eat. We have to go train today, the black-haired woman pointed out, abandoning all drama. That made Sasuke think he was bipolar. But he also knew his mother was angry with him, so she didn't contradict him. He just ate in silence and with a distracted look. He had to talk to Naruto to see what they would do. Although a drop of sweat slipped down his neck when he felt a dark aura nearby, she looked up to meet her father, who was looking at her murderously with the Sharingan activated. Mikoto stopped in the middle of her monologue when she felt Fugaku behind her. Annoyed at the fact that he was bothering her at that precise moment when she was pampering her child, she looked back with the Sharingan activated. The two glared at each other before their son's eyes. Sasuke thought that what he had left of respect for his father had definitely been lost. Oh, Naruto snorted, annoyed, as he watched his mother go after Hayashi Hyuga. He definitely didn't understand how he was chasing them like nothing without exhausting himself, and he thanked God that he hadn't suffered any of that yet. Her mother was careful. Only in her mind when she helped her control the Kaibai was she violent. She didn't want to know what she would be like in the flesh. Hinata, who was walking beside him, chuckled softly. She looked at him out of the corner of her eye. She had barely had contact with Hinata since the time she saved him from pain, when, "I love you." Hinata's words resonated in her mind. It was true, she hadn't even thanked him, but she had so many things on her mind that she didn't have a chance. "Kushina, leave Hayashi." Hinata was trying to save his friend's life. "Hey, you, say something." The beaten Hayashi demanded of Hana. She shrugged her shoulders. She was more attentive to what was happening to her daughter. Naruto tried to ignore all those screams. They had already been walking for 10 minutes since they left the Hyuga mansion to go to the training grounds. Now that he had the opportunity, it was better to take advantage of it. It stopped abruptly. Hinata stopped walking at the same time, looking at him in surprise. "Why is something happening in Naruto-kun?" She was worried. When she felt Naruto's blue eyes rest on her, Hinata looked down in embarrassment and fiddled with her fingers nervously. She hated putting herself like that in front of him, but it was something she couldn't help. Her body always reacted in the same way. "Hinata, the Uzumaki began to say. "W are you?" Hana sized up her daughter's flushed cheeks and the nervousness and shyness that had risen, so it was Naruto. Kushina, at that moment, managed to push her boyfriend away and began to kick Hayashi, venting part of her frustration on him, and when Uchiha arrived, he would play his part, as always. Everyone looked away to the place where Tsunade had just stamped her fist, which was on a tree that had fallen and been reduced to splinters. Sakura looked at the Sanin angrily. "I will not say anything. Talk snotty or sleep on the street." "Then I'll sleep on the street." The pink-haired girl dodged the next blow from her teacher and rushed to catch up with her, smiling nervously at them. A few minutes later the others arrived, namely Mikoto, Fugaku, and Sasuke, the first two very pissed off and looking like they had had one of their occasional fights. Something that was very common. Naruto snorted. He had been cut off in the middle of his thanks. As soon as everyone was gathered, Sakura, following her teacher, checked on Hinata and tried to do the same with Sasuke, but he wouldn't let her. "HMP, the Uchiha gave him a hard look full of contempt. "I'm not interested in your help, Sakura." Mikoto looked at her son with her mouth open, ready to make him learn good manners, but the pink-haired girl's reply didn't allow it. "Very well, if that's what you want, Sasuke." She looked at him with almost the same contempt. "In the future I won't bother again." And he crossed his arms. Even with his eyes open, he could remember the faces of his friends, Kakashi-senseis. He would have forgiven Sasuke everything, even wanting to kill her and even wanting to destroy Konoha, but Ino, Kakashi, Naruto, and Tsunade were his family, and he mercilessly killed the first two, also trying the second two. "Sakura-chan, Sasuke," Naruto called sadly. Neither of them responded. The tense atmosphere surrounded them for a few moments before, of course, Kushina, tired of that, turned to Fugaku and put her head on it. "What's wrong with you, crazy?" The furious Uchiha yelled at him. Kushina gave him a mischievous smile. "I need to get even for a while, Baka." They all looked at him with a drop on their heads, momentarily forgetting what happened minutes before between Sasuke and Sakura. Seeing that the others' attention was diverted from the fight, Hinata sheepishly turned to them. Thinking about changing the future." "There's nothing to think about. We'll change the future, Databeo," Naruto stated energetically. Sasuke nodded, as did Sakura. Hinata smiled when she saw her mother. Maybe that was the best decision. Then a voice echoed in Naruto's mind. "Ha ha ha ha, brat, as deluded as always. Wow, what an honor, Fox, if you had been very quiet, Titebeo. Ha, you stupid kid. But the others are just like you." And then he was in front of the fox's cage, and to his complete surprise, Sakura, Sasuke, and Hinata were at his side. The black-haired man didn't seem very surprised, but the two girls were, since they backed away in fear when they saw the fox for the first time. Naruto unconsciously stuck to Hinata. He still remembered that because of his transformation into the Kaibai, he almost killed her, so the least he could do at that moment was protect her. "Don't worry, Hinata, Databeo. I'll protect you." Hinata blushed but nodded silently. Sasuke just rolled his eyes at the pathetic scene, according to him. The pinkhead smiled internally. "You guys will ask yourself, why have I brought you here?" said the Kaibai in a bored way. "Well, yes, Titebeo," Naruto answered suspiciously. "What are you up to?" The fox laughed. "Nothing, but I'm bored, so I'll help you." "Help us," Sasuke repeated it without grace. "Tell me, children, how do you plan to change the future if you don't know the past?" That left them silent. The Kaibai's mischievous laughter resounded in the room where they were, but it was true, they didn't know anything at all. Most of the few things they did know were by pure chance or because they had been told. They knew nothing of that time. Ha, you see, the demon laughed with amusement. They have no idea of anything. They don't know what happened for everything to be as it is in the future. And perhaps you. The angry Uzumaki challenged him. Of course I do. How? I have been present all the time, child. Even when you were just a baby, with my chakra, I could know everything that was going on. Don't you want to know? Why will Uchiha and Hyuga be enemies in the future, seeing the good relationship they have now? Or why is everyone blaming the Uchiha clan for my attack? Why did the village antagonize the Uchiha more? Why did Hana Hyuga change? What is the reason why all this is happening? For a second, they said nothing. I can show them to you, said the Kaibai. In exchange for what? Sakura asked sharply. Midora, I simply want to kill that damn human who thought he could control me so easily. When they change what they want to change, they will give it to me to kill. Done, Sasuke and Naruto said at the same time. Hinata bit her lower lip in concern. Very well, the cage said, and the room disappeared. Then see for yourselves. What happened to the Uchiha the night they attacked the village? Oh, they blinked to find themselves in another place, more specifically in the Uchiha neighborhood. Mikoto is no longer Kunoichi. They looked at how Fugaku Uchiha, about 25 years old, looked at Danzu with displeasure. Mikoto had a little Sasuke in his arms, and Itachi, about 5 years old, looked at everything from the side of his parents. Sasuke clenched his fists, the Sharingan spinning deadly in his eyes. She's still an Uchiha, and she's your wife, Danzu said mischievously. Or is it that Uchihas don't have pride in shinobi? Fugaku growled angrily before going down the small stairs of his house and taking the scroll the old man offered him. Very well, we will do the mission. Mikoto nodded, handing Itachi to Sasuke. Take care of him, he said, giving them both a kiss. We'll be back soon. Itachi nodded, looking coldly at the old man. The two husbands went to change and left after 5 minutes, leaving quickly to return to Konoha before dawn. She still did not understand why they had to do such a ridiculous mission at night. Little Itachi cooed to his little brother, and giving the old man an almost contemptuous look, he went to his house. Danzu smiled mischievously. Very well, now only Midora acts, and then the Uchiha clan will fall from grace. He disappeared in a cloud of smoke with a macabre smile. Naruto backed away in disbelief. His father had told him that the Kaibai's attack was planned by Midora and all that, but Danzu. So that's it, Sasuke muttered with hatred reflected in his eyes. Clenching his fists in anger, he planned everything. He understood everything. The Uchiha clan had been blamed for the Fox's attack since, at the time of the attack, their leaders were not in the village. It had been so easy to blame them, and in the end, everything had been planned by Danzu. It had not been a coincidence. And this is only the beginning of everything. They heard the Kaibai mocking. And this is only the beginning of everything. They heard the Kaibai mocking. Sasuke clenched his fists, taking a step as if he were ready to go home, and just then the entire Uchiha neighborhood disappeared and they found themselves in another place. It must have been outside of Konoha. They were in a secluded place, and in front of them appeared a medium-sized house, surrounded by a small river, in which the bodies of several ANBUs floated. Sakura brought her hands to her lips to keep from screaming. Hinata trembled when she realized that they were all dead. The blonde instead walked into the house without looking at them. From what his mother had told him, he was almost sure what was happening inside. No doubt the others followed. They entered the only room just to see two women fall to the floor and hear Minato's exclamation. The Hokage looked older, though not much. After all, he couldn't have been more than 23 or 25. Kushina was lying on a bed. Both of them had their eyes focused on the women. Taji, Daiwako-sama. Minato stared at the two women in disbelief. What the hell? Fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, the voice said, making the spouses, Sakura, Sasuke, Naruto, and Hinata look up to see a masked acquaintance holding a little blonde baby in his arms. Stay away from the Jinchuriki, or your son will die at the ripe old age of 1 minute, he taunted cruelly. Naruto looked down in pain. Hearing it had been one thing and seeing it was another. The pain and despair he could see in his parents' eyes. Wait, Kyuubi, Sasuke had yelled at that moment, his Sharingan spinning furiously in his eyes. The scene froze. What do you want, kid? The demon's voice was heard resounding in the room. What the fuck is this? She hissed in a chilling voice. What a damned lie you are inventing. The Uchiha was making a superhuman effort not to lose patience, something that he definitely didn't have too much of. What that scene showed him was Madara undoubtedly threatening newborn Naruto, and it's not that he cared that it happened, because it was obvious that nothing would happen since Naruto was alive, but what made him angry was that Madara called Naruto's mother Jinchuriki. It didn't take much thinking to figure out what would happen next. And no, it couldn't be true. Madara said that Kaibai's attack had been a phenomenon that could not be controlled. That was what he had said. I'm not making up any lies, child, the Kaibai replied maliciously. Let me guess, that damn Madara made up a story about attacking Konoha because I wanted to. Aha, let me tell you, child, attacking that insignificant village didn't interest me at any time. Kushina Uzumaki, Naruto's mother, was my previous Jinchuriki? Asked the brat. The Uchiha turned his gaze to what he once considered his best friend. Naruto had his blue eyes still on his parents, yet he answered. Yes, what the Kaibai says is true. Mom told me that she was the previous Jinchuriki of the Kaibai, and the fox was sealed inside minutes before it attacked the village. Is a lie. It's not, Naruto said seriously. It's not. Go, and you will know exactly what happened that night, the night my parents died to save me, the night your clan fell from grace. Why your parents died to save you? Hinata mumbled, confused. I think Naruto is right, we just have to see. Sakura intervened with a weak voice. Something inside her told her that everything they would see would be extremely sad. As Sasuke didn't say more, the Kaibai kept showing everything. Kushina's screams, when Minato rescued Naruto from Madara, and when the house exploded when the smoke cleared, they were in another place. On the outskirts of Konoha, Madara had already taken Kushina out, positioning her on a rock. The seal stretched out, binding her. What do you want? Asked the extremely weak redhead, breathing heavily. He informed her as if he were talking about the weather and not about destroying a village. Sasuke dug his nails into the palms of his hands until fine threads of blood slipped from them. His red eyes radiated so much hatred when he saw Madara, it couldn't be true, and then he remembered Itachi's words from his brother. In the end, it had been true, Madara had been the culprit of the fox's attack. He would kill him. He had been seeing her stupid face. Naruto looked at Madara with almost the same hate. Seeing his mother so unprotected made him so angry. Kushina looked at Madara in horror. What? Minato's teleportation technique uses a mark that allows him to move instantly from one marked place to the next. Madara explained that, looking at the seal on the redhead's stomach, he knew he had to hurry because Minato would be on his way. So, even if he leaves, he will always be with you to protect you. But I have already managed to keep him away from here, and the seal is extremely weakened after the delivery. Do you have any idea how long I've waited for this moment? Sakura growled with her eyes full of tears. Hinata was just like her, there, seeing how the day that should have been the happiest for Minato and Kushina due to the birth of Naruto turned into the most horrible of their nightmares. They didn't know anything about it, it was so sad. Kushina rolled her eyes, screaming, while the Kaibai's cloak completely covered her, and little by little she smashed her stomach, making the Kaibai start to come out. She screamed in pain, but she couldn't do anything. In the midst of her desperation, small tears shone in her eyes. Damn, Naruto pronounced with his bangs covering his eyes and with a note of hate in his voice, damn Madara. She screeched, trying to go for him, forgetting that this was just a memory, forgetting everything when she heard his mother's screams. Sakura made as if to catch him before he ran for nothing, but Hinata stepped forward, timidly yet firmly taking Naruto's hand and squeezing it gently. The blonde looked at her for a second and then calmed down. Come here, Kyuubi. They came back to reality when they saw that the Kaibai had completely left the redhead's body. She was freed from her own seal, and she fell on the rock where she had been before. We will go to Konoha. Madara stopped when he heard Uzumaki's erratic breathing. Stop, Kushina stammered, raising her head with an effort, her eyes almost closed. Sakura gasped. Still alive. Her chakra is special, Naruto muttered weakly. That's why she was chosen to be the fox's vessel. I think it's a good test for the Kaibai to kill his former Jinchuriki, Madara said mockingly. Hinata sobbed softly when she saw the scene. Everything was horrible. She couldn't believe how someone could be so evil to do that, and it hurt. It hurt a lot, not only because she thought Naruto's parents didn't deserve that, but because the blue eyes of the boy she loved reflected so much pain and hatred that she herself could feel it as if it were her own. After Minato arrived in time to rescue her, taking her to where their sleeping son was, the redhead sobbed, hugging her little son, with such sorrow and pain that the four present, even Sasuke himself, who could not do anything but remember his mother, felt it. Powerlessness, suffering, and the purest pain. The pain of a mother who was sure that she would not see her son grow, that she would not be with him to see him laugh, cry, give him love, raise him, and make him a good man. The pain of separation and sacrifice. Minato, at his side, had the same grief and impotence. They had painted the same expression of wanting to scream, break something, get even, and stay together, forgetting everything else, but against all odds, they saw how he got up, put on his cage cloak, and got ready for war. Naruto couldn't do anything but keep squeezing Hinata's warm and comforting hand. He had no head at all. Sakura had put a hand on his shoulder, somehow silently telling him that she was with him. However, he knew that the worst was yet to happen. As Minato left, leaving Kushina and Naruto alone, they listened in disbelief to the redhead's wail. Mikoto, Kushina whispered with her eyes on the ceiling, her expression was so confused. What will happen to you? Why die? Why did the Uchiha clan disappear? That, Sasuke whispered. Sakura and Hinata didn't understand what was happening. The scene froze again. I didn't know that, Naruto whispered in disbelief. How did his mother know about the massacre of the Uchiha clan? Mama didn't tell me anything, Titebeo. Yes, well, that's something very interesting, said the Kaibai with a note of evil amusement in his voice. Jinchurikis who have a good relationship with their Bijis and who are about to die begin to see flashes of the future they will not see. Mito had them at the time, the brat too, a few months before you were born, and when Madara took me out of her body, it was the last thing he saw, the dead Uchiha. It's impossible, Sakura muttered in a daze, to see the future. Impossible. And you who are in the past say that it is impossible. How stupid. It's because the sea chakra is so big and powerful, Hinata said in a low voice. The other three looked at her blankly. The Bijis are considered gods, TT. having the ability to see what others can't see. I guess the Jinkrikis have their chakras and the possibility of seeing the future. Exactly, the Kaibai said softly. Now stop babbling, brats, keep watching everything before I regret it. Wait, Naruto interrupted, will I have visions too, Databeo? The Kaibai sneered coldly. When you have them, rest assured that your end is near. Now they appeared in Konoha itself, where the Kaibai was already attacking. They were all running and screaming, trying to escape the demon. Amidst the faces of the Hokage in the mountains, they saw Minato standing on his own face carved in the middle of the mountain. The Kaibai noticed and tried to throw a Biju bomb at him. Not while I'm here, he exclaimed, raising the kunai he had in his hands. I managed to make the Biju bomb explode in another place. Madara appeared behind him, trying to absorb him, but they instantly realized that Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage, was really the most powerful ninja of that time when he escaped from Madara. They watched the entire battle in silence. Minato won, thus proving that he had very well earned the title of Yellow Lightning. In this way, he managed to take control of the Kaibai from him and put a seal on it, causing it to appear at his side. Madara had no choice but to admit defeat and walk away from the blonde. You truly deserve the title of 4th Hokage, he praised. You were able to hurt me and take control of the Kaibai from me with a single attempt. But one day it will be mine again. The fox in this world will bend to my will. I still have many doors open for that. And disappeared. You bastard, Sasuke hissed hatefully. Now he was sure that Itachi had not lied to protect the village. In the end, he had been helping the one who was responsible for the destruction of the Uchiha clan. Minato went for the Kaibai, taking it to the place where he had sheltered his wife and son. Kushina trapped the demon with chains made from his chakra, and then, seeing Naruto almost collapsing, they were certain that it was the saddest moment of all. I will take the Kaibai inside me again, and there it will die. That will prevent him from appearing again for a while. That's the only way I can save you both with the little chakra I still have left, Kushina explained, smiling at him, small trickles of blood slipping from his lips. The Kaibai growled louder. Thank you for everything. Minato whispered with love, thank you for loving me and for always being with me. Thank you for everything you have given me and for Naruto. I love you, Sakura and Hinata cried at the parting. Sasuke looked at the ground without knowing what to feel. After all, they were the parents of his old friend, they were his parents' friends. Kushina, Minato said desperately, almost begging that this was a dream, you made me your husband. You made me the 4th Hokage. You made me the father of this child. And, don't be sad, Minato. I'm very happy. I'm happy that you loved me. Happy that our son was born. The gaze of the two fell on Naruto. I imagine him surviving this. The three of us surviving together. And I can't think of anything other than I'm so happy, she smiled sadly. The longing for that wish reflected very well in his words. It would be fantastic if that happened. I would teach Naruto to tease Fugaku Baka and Sasuke-kun, to be gallant with women and to make Neji his friend. I would do so many things with him and with you, and we would be happy. We would be the family I always wanted. It would give him love, care, and scolding when he needed it. It would make him a great shinobi, like Jiraiya-sama. Tears began to stream down Naruto's face, silent tears. Since he was a child, he had stopped crying. He had done it again when Jiraiya died, but now it was impossible not to. They were his parents, dying to save him. Naruto-kun, Hinata murmured in a sob, raising her delicate arms and wrapping them around the blonde's back. Instantly, Naruto leaned on her, embracing her petite and well-proportioned body and crying with sadness and pain. Crying for her parents and for what they had sacrificed. Sakura stayed behind, even though she wanted to comfort her friend. She stayed where she was, knowing full well that the only one who could help him at that moment was Hinata, because she loved him and only she could give him enough comfort and love. Not like her, who despite everything continued to love Sasuke, the person who had killed her father and her sister in front of her eyes. If there's one thing I regret, Kushina continued sadly, it's that I won't see Naruto grow up. Minato wiped away his tears and looked at him seriously. Kushina, you don't need to take care of the Kaibai by yourself. We can use our last traces of chakra to be able to see Naruto once more. The redhead looked at him, confused. I'll seal the last of your chakra inside Naruto with an 8-point seal. Then I will separate the Kaibai with a seal that only someone like me, someone who is not a Jinkriki, can use, the seal of the Demon of Death. But who makes that seal will be. She was alarmed to see the decision shining in those blue eyes that she loved so much. At what moment did it occur to her to show her that seal? She should never have done it. Minato continued, ignoring that. Just for that one and only time, she wouldn't do what she wanted. I will only be able to seal half of Kaibai's power. It is physically and conceptually impossible to completely seal it. I can't allow the Kaibai to be revived without a Jinkriki. The balance of the Biju would be destroyed. But with this seal, I can permanently seal the Kaibai with me and the other half of his power. You know that, right? It will be the Child of Destiny. The Child of Destiny. At some point in the near future, the shinobi world will be faced with disaster. His sensei's words echoed in his mind, and he focused his gaze on Naruto, who was already calmer. A new glow appeared in his son, and the Child of Destiny would be his savior. That was what had to happen. His son would become the disciple of his teacher, and unlike him, she would revolutionize the ninja world to the point of bringing what everyone wanted. Peace. I'll seal the other half of Naruto with an 8-point seal, he said firmly. What? Kushina exclaimed in disbelief and fear. She had seen it in the future, when Hinata was getting in the way of that man trying to kill Naruto, when he got angry and transformed into the Kaibai with 6 tails. But she didn't think that Minato himself was the one who sealed the Kaibai inside him. It was his son. Minato looked frustrated. I know what you'll tell me, but Jiraiya-sensei told me that the ninja world would fall into a revolution and a huge disaster. And tonight I have confirmed 2 things. The first is that the masked man who attacked you is the harbinger of disaster, and Naruto will be the one to stop him, the Jinchuriki who will open the path to the future for us. That's what I know. They cocked their heads slightly as they watched the third arrive there. Minato got up and began to form seals. But Minato, she begged. He wanted to avoid that fate for his son, but how could he do it if Minato himself led him down that path full of pain? Seal of the Demon of Death. Behind him appeared the Demon of Death, sealing his soul. The redhead bit her lip, not knowing what else to say. You must have hope. After all, he is our son. She looked at him sadly. She knew perfectly well what Kushina thought about that. She could read it in the despair on her face, but he wouldn't back down. That wasn't just for Konoha, it was for his son, for Kushina, and for him. Ninja World. After the Death Demon seal ends, I will place your remaining chakra inside Naruto. You will see Naruto grow up sooner than you can imagine. The time will come when he tries to take control of the Kaibai, and I need you there to help him, no one better than his own ex-Jinchuriki mother. Kushina gave him a challenging look. Our own son, he said with reproach in his voice. That's why I don't want to leave that weight on him alone. She then claimed him for the seal that she planned to make, even though she knew that Naruto would be the child of the prophecy. She wanted Minato to live, to see him grow and help him to be a great shinobi, but his response disarmed her. She could not say anything against him, even if he couldn't replace her. She was sure he would make everything right, but she knew he would refuse to listen to reason. Minato knew that leaving his son alone to his own fate was nothing worthy of courage, but neither was leaving his country destroyed. That was what it meant to be a shinobi, what it meant to him to be the Hokage. Sacrifice. There are things Naruto would need to know, things I can't tell him. And that is up to you. It is your duty as a mother, even if you have little time. It's not just about you. Also from Naruto. Dying to leave your son a better life, that's what you should let me do. It is my duty as a father. After that explanation, the seal began, causing the Kaibai to reduce its size and enclose half of its chakra together with its soul. Outside the barrier made by Minato, the third, along with other ninjas, watched everything without being able to do anything to help. Reeling from the dense fox's chakra, Minato summoned a small ceremonial throne where he placed Naruto, and at a moment of his inattention, the Kaibai tried to kill him. Blood splattered on Kaibai's claw, the claw that had pierced through Minato and Kushina's bodies when saving their son from death. The third and the other 2 ninja gasped at the sight of them spitting up blood. Is it your own son? The third incredulous man said to himself outside the protective field they had erected. They are protecting him. Hinata noticed that one of the ninjas that were next to the third Hokage belonged to his clan, a Hyuga. Minato narrowed his eyes in pain. Kushina was in front of him, her hands on the Kaibai's claw, preventing him from advancing another millimeter. In the end, the 2 sacrificed everything for their son. Blood also slipped from Minato's mouth as the Kaibai pierced his stomach. Kushina laughed. If your father is capable of doing his duty, your mother must do even better, right? She inquired with some amusement. Minato looked at him confused. You win. This is the first time you've won an argument. I think you're really right. There was no turning back. She herself knew it since she began to have those dreams of the future. That was Naruto's destiny, and she should not intervene. The only thing she could do, being Minato's wife, was to support him in his decision, and being Naruto's mother, she could save him and explain everything to him in due course. Thank you, Kushina, Minato said, smiling. With the blood from his chest, he made the summoning technique, calling out to Gamatora. The toad appeared at the call. Ah, the Kyuubi. The terrified toad was alarmed, then he looked at Minato and widened his eyes. And the room. What the hell has happened to them? Gamatora entrusted you with the key to the seal. Take it to Jiraiya-sensei as soon as possible, let him keep it for him. The toad agreed, understood. Howdy, bye-bye. I see, said the third, understanding everything. Minato tries to save Konoha, turning his own son into the next Jinchuriki. Minato cleared his throat. It worked. It's time for me to go, Kushina, but first I'll perform the 8-point seal. If you have something to say to Naruto. The redhead looked at her son. Naruto, don't be a picky eater. Eat a lot and grow up to be a great kid. Bathe every day. Go to bed early and sleep well. He paused, in which he saw how the third looked helplessly, and then continued, make friends. It doesn't matter how many. Just that they are good friends and that you can fully trust them. And he studies ninjutsu. Haha, I was never good with them, but I know that you will. Everyone is good and bad at some things. You can't expect to be the best at everything, so don't feel bad about it. Obey your teachers at the academy, and remember, avoid the 3 vices of the shinobi. Do not ask for money if you cannot pay it. Save money on your missions. Don't drink sake until you're 20, and don't overdo it, or you'll ruin your body as far as women are concerned. Well, I am one of them, so I don't know what to tell you, but there are only men and women in this world, and one day you will want to have a girlfriend. Just try not to pick a weirdo. Find yourself someone like your mother, someone who values you, who loves you, and who loves you for yourself. Naruto kept watching the scene, and at his mother's last words, he tightened his hug on Hinata. And the best advice from the fourth Hokage is to take care of Jiraiya-sensei. Minato intervened, smiling despite everything. Naruto, Kushina murmured softly, her eyes filled with tears, now remembering every dream she had quite clearly. You're going to experience a lot of pain and suffering, she sobbed, remembering the loneliness she always saw with her son. But you must remember who you are. Look for a dream, a goal, and don't stop until you achieve it. There are so many things I would like to tell you. She cried pitifully. I would like to continue with you. I love you so much, my child. The Hokage trembled, and little by little, life left his body. Kushina's words let her know that Naruto was really going to suffer a lot. It was the life that a Jinchuriki was waiting for. I stole your time, Kushina muttered. Sorry, it doesn't matter. Naruto, I'm your father. But you must listen to your talkative mother. The little boy, still asleep, smiled, feeling the warmth and love that his parents gave him in his last moments of life, the love and sacrifice that they offered him so that he could stay alive. Minato and Kushina cried once more, regretting everything that had happened and watching their son sleep, trying to believe that this was the last image they would see before they died. Seal of the 8 Symbols. A bright light blinded everyone for a moment. When they opened their eyes, the Kaibai was gone. Kushina collapsed on the ground, crawling to her son's side, placing one of her hands on the baby's and the other leaving it free. She smiled sadly and closed her eyes. Minato. They didn't know how, but Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizune had just come running, their faces distorted in horror and denial. The blonde was still standing, but after a few seconds the barrier disappeared, and he fell to the other side of the ceremonial throne, smiling as he crawled over and placed one hand on the boy's little hand and the other on Kushina's. The shadow of the fire illuminates the town, he whispered. Jiraiya ran towards him. Minato looked at him, still smiling. You were more than a teacher, you were a father to me. Sensei, I know that he will also love you as one of the family. She blinked once more and closed her eyes, stopping her breathing. Tsunade fell to her knees beside him, staring in disbelief at the corpses of the 2 people who mattered most to her in the village. Very well, very well. They heard the voice of the Kaibai, and the scene dissolved, leaving them in front of the demon's cage again. Now the rest follows. What I showed you was only the night Konoha attacked. Now everything that follows is missing and explains all the consequences of that night. What assures us that it is not a lie? Sasuke asked in a chilling voice. He hoped the demon was lying, because if he wasn't, he had no excuse for being a puppet for Madara's bastard. The Kyuubi snorted. Whether you believe me or not, kid, that's your problem. But you can keep watching, everything fits, and you can realize the truth. I don't think that being an Uchiha makes you such an idiot. He growled in fury. Calm down, Sasuke, Sakura said dryly. The Kaibai is right, we must see everything, and then you can decide if you want to believe or not. No one has brought you into this conversation, Sakura, the black-haired man told her furiously. Do not think that you are the only one who cares about all this. You are not the only one who suffers. Okay, the Uchiha was about to reply, but Naruto, letting go of Hinata and smiling weakly at her, turned to his friends because he considered the 2 of them friends, even if he had to kill Sasuke at the end. Shut up, Titebeo. Do you want to know what happened or not? Tusk, damn brats, hissed the Kaibai, that's why I hate humans. Good, now you'll see everything, from what happened after my attack to the death of Hana Hyuga. At her mother's appointment, Hinata winced, but remained silent. They were again in the same place. Tsunade began to scream when she found out that Minato had locked the Kaibai in his own son, and it was there that Naruto and Sakura finally understood why Tsunade had hated for so long the thought of being a Hokage. The Hokage die young. My grandfather and the second one made an effort to bring peace to the country, but they only managed to die without fulfilling their dreams, like losers. The blonde said everything with an empty and cold voice, unimportant, being Hokage suckers. Only an idiot would want to be. Those were the words when she and Naruto met, and there was so much rancor in her voice that at that moment he didn't understand. Minato couldn't. Tsunade looked at the 2 blondes with horror. He couldn't lock that monster in his own mind. The third said nothing. The blonde screamed louder, advancing to where the trees were and unloading blows left and right, tearing them off the ground and crying uncontrollably. Why condemn her own son to that life? Kushina was one thing, no one found out about her, but the Kaibai's attack on Konoha was practically like revealing that there was a Jinchuriki, because that was the only way for the fox to just disappear. They would all know, and they would despise the child instantly. Kushina agreed. Jiraiya asked quietly. Sarutobi nodded. We don't know what really happened. The only thing we know is that the Kaibai attacked Konoha and that Minato was missing for a long time. Tsunade, you have to help. The blonde turned on him, furious, angry, and frustrated. Help, you say? How am I going to do it? Konoha will hate that kid. Minato sacrificed his own son for the village. That stupid being Hokage is an idiot. Your son. His own son. Why did they choose the village before the child? It was their decision. And what? They did not think about what that child was going to suffer without parents. Minato and Kushina were idiots. Shut up, Tsunade. Jiraiya yelled furiously, shut up, it was their decision. Minato is not stupid. Kushina and he were looking forward to that child. If they made that decision, it was for something, not just for the village. It was the first time he had yelled at her, and it was shock that silenced her. We have to hide that this child is the son of Minato and Kushina, said the third. No one can know. He will be registered under the name of Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki, but before everyone, it will be Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Kaibai. Tsunade looked at them spitefully. Why does he have to hide that? Why are you going to lie? If they at least know that he is Minato's son, they won't try to do anything to him. Sarutobi looked at him seriously. Imagine what the other ninja villages would think when they found out that the only son of Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Lightning Bolt, the hero of the Third War, the most feared and hated ninja, and Kushina Uzumaki, the ninja of the Whirlpool, had a chakra that many wanted to the point of kidnapping her. Imagine what they would think if they knew that their only son was orphaned and was a Jinchuriki. The Sanin recoiled at those words as if she had been slapped. But that made her react. It was true that Minato was not only respected, he was also feared and hated for all the lives he had taken to defend Konoha. If they found out that her son was alone, they'll kill him, she whispered in horror. That would be better than turning him into a weapon against Konoha, Jiraiya said, but it's true, no one should know his true identity. So that's why, Sakura murmured, looking at Naruto, that's why you carry your mother's last name. It was to protect you, Hinata agreed. Naruto shrugged. And so, in silence, they continued to observe the rancor that could be seen in Tsunade's honey eyes when she saw her teacher, Naruto, as a baby, and finally the rejection on her face when she looked up and made out the village in the distance. Tsunade healed Kushina's wounds and, with some strange technique, managed to make her belly swell in such a way that she looked like she was still pregnant. When they arrived at the village, carrying the bodies of Minato and Kushina, the whole village cried for them, lamenting their deaths and instantly hating the Kaiba, and therefore Naruto, just for having him inside, not knowing that he was the son of those who had given their lives for the village. Hiro, Makoto Uchiha, who had already arrived with Fugaku and who was with the others crying for his friends, yelled upon hearing the words of the third, upon hearing that the Jinchuriki should be treated as a hero. That child is guilty of their deaths. He is a murderer. That child is a curse. You can't expect us to accept it. We will never see him as a hero. Our friends have died because of the demon he carries inside. Then Hana yelled furiously, supporting her friend. The two were crying and glaring at the baby. Tsunade closed her eyes. She knew that would happen. The villagers wouldn't accept it, but it would be worse with Minato and Kushina's friends. They would see him as a demon. Hatred would completely blind them. And they wouldn't let them see anything else. They wouldn't let them see the resemblance he had with Minato, nor the way Kushina's blue eyes gleamed. He would simply be the demon that attacked the village and killed them. Jiraiya sighed. Enough, at least respect Minato's last wish. Makoto straightened up. No, I will never respect that wish. That child does not deserve to live. The rancor in his dark eyes was too obvious. After that statement, the murmurs spread throughout the village, and to the dismay of the third party, it was only to give him his approval. It seemed like Makoto and Hana blamed Naruto for the tragedy. If they knew who he really was, they wouldn't say that, although they would surely react like Tsunade, not understanding why Minato sacrificed his own son for the village. The ANBUS surrounded them at that moment. Danzu was in command of all of them, looking at the Uchiha with a mischievous smile. Where were you while the Kaibai attacked Konoha? He questioned. Fugaku looked away from his friend to see the old man scowling. On the mission you sent us, he answered coldly and inexpressively. Mission, he repeated, pretending to be confused. What mission? You sent us on a reconnaissance mission. Makoto yelled at him furiously. They were all silent. The third one looked from Uchiha to Danzu, and Tsunade next to him frowned. Why would he give them a simple reconnaissance mission? Much more considering that Makoto was no longer a Kunoichi and Fugaku was the head of the Uchiha clan to do such simple things. I never sent them on a reconnaissance mission, Danzu said dryly. It's ridiculous. At least they should give more credible excuses. What are you implying? Makoto asked slowly. You sent us on that mission. Can anyone prove that? Said Danzu mockingly, making a sign, and the ANBUS apprehended the two Uchihas. I was with the council part of the afternoon and all night. I was also in the fight. What you say is extremely ridiculous. I never gave them a mission. Fugaku tried to free himself from the ANBUS but couldn't do anything. Itachi was with us. It is his son. He will say what you order him to. And until proven otherwise, you, Fugaku and Makoto Uchiha, as well as your entire clan, are responsible and guilty of the Kaibai attack. Hana's eyes widened in horror. Looking at Makoto in disbelief, the black-haired girl looked at Danzu with horror and fury. That's a lie. She squealed, upset. Minato and Kushina were our friends. Why would we want to attack them? Who says that? We're talking about the attack on Konoha. You've always wanted to be in command of the village. Of course, you probably didn't expect Minato and Kushina to sacrifice themselves, but that doesn't matter. Their sacrifices have saved us today. Are you saying it's good that they died? Hana yelled. Being a Hokage is a great sacrifice. Minato wanted it that way. We all know that the Kaibai couldn't come like that and decide to attack Konoha out of nowhere because someone was controlling it. And one of the few things that can control it is the Sharingan, he said softly, looking at Fugaku's red eyes, which he had activated. The Sharingan in the midst of its fury. Nobody said anything. Makoto and Fugaku kept glaring at him. The Uchiha clan has fallen out of favor, he scoffed. That's ridiculous, Tsunade said. Don't get involved in this, princess. You no longer belong to Konoha. Not her, but Danzu, said the third seriously. I think you've forgotten that I'm the Hokage now that Minato has died. The old man stopped smiling. and until proven otherwise, they are innocent, and I assure you they have their legs in perfect condition so they can walk. Let them go." The ANBUS hesitated for a second before obeying. "Now, Mikoto, Fugaku, go to the Uchiha neighborhood and don't move from there until I go see you." The two nodded and disappeared in a puff of smoke. "Rin, Kakashi, I want you in my office in 2 hours. We have to talk about Naruto." Kakashi nodded. "I won't go near that monster." The teenager next to Kakashi yelled for her part. They didn't recognize her. "Who is she?" Naruto asked, surprised. He tried to forget those words. He knew that she was saying it because of everything that had happened. He couldn't blame her, or at least he didn't try to. The Kyuubi laughed. "Her name is Rin, and she is the teammate of your sensei and a Baido Uchiha. In other words, she is a student of the Yondaime." Sakura and Naruto looked at each other for a moment. They didn't know what to think. They didn't know anything about Kakashi-sensei's past. He had never talked about it. What's more, they just found out that there was an Uchiha on his team, and Sakura deduced that it was because of him that his sensei had the Sharingan. What happened to her? The Uzumaki kept asking. Sasuke closed his eyes upon hearing Kaiba's laugh. "It might work, but you know, all the people I hold dear are dead," Kakashi told him that day when the sound guys convinced him to go with Orochimaru. So if he wasn't wrong, that girl, Rin, would also die. "She's dead," the Kaibai said in a mocking tone, "and if you knew what the reason for her death was, haha. That, nothing, just watch, and you'll know." And the scene dissolved. They blinked to see themselves in the Hokage's office, along with the Sanin, Shizune, Kakashi, and Rin, with baby Naruto in their hands. The brunette had been cooing in her arms, her voice broken by crying. "So he's Sensei's son," Kakashi murmured, looking at his friend and the boy sadly. "Yes," Rin cried again, but there was no rejection in her eyes when she saw the child. Knowing the truth, all hatred had disappeared. In the end, Tsunade left, stating she would never return to Konoha again, hatred and sadness in her gaze. "So this is the reason for all your hate," Sakura murmured softly. "Having lost more loved ones, all to save Konoha." Naruto looked at Rin with narrowed eyes. He didn't know why, but now that he looked at her more closely, hearing her voice broken by crying and hearing her last words, he began to understand something. "Now I'll take care of him." The young woman got up with the baby in her arms and a fierce look, as if challenging someone to contradict her. Since no one did, she left her office cooing to him, "I'll take care of you, Naruto. For Sensei and Kushina-san, I'll protect you, even if it costs me my life. I will protect you, even if I have to give my life, I promise." Naruto widened his eyes. Those words had always haunted his dreams when he was a child. He had never known who they belonged to, and they were almost the same words that that girl had dedicated to him, and as soon as he realized that, he knew that maybe she had kept that promise. Hana fell to the ground, and Hayashi and Hisashi next to her, with their eyes lowered and holding back their tears, continued standing. They tried to be strong, but it was difficult, especially after seeing their dead friends. Hinata recognized the ninja that was standing in front of her parents and her uncle. He was the one who had been with the third one of the ones who knew the truth about Naruto. Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto were next to her. They hardly said anything anymore, they just limited themselves to seeing everything. And then, Hana asked, sobbing and with her hands on her face, WD was what she said. The ninja hesitated for a moment. Yondaime said, "Treat him like the hero who saved Konoha today." Kushina-san said, "Give him my last name. It's not his fault." "What's not your fault?" The Hyuga removed her hands from her face, showing her face battered and full of tears, but what surprised her the most was her look. She had always been sweet, tender, and friendly. Now in her pearly eyes, you could only see rancor, pure rancor, and resentment. They couldn't ask for that. Not when that kid has the demon that killed them. And they began to cry again. More than crying, shouting, and saying the names of her friends with sadness and anger. Nothing else, as Ashi muttered into clenched fists. Yondaime said something else. He looked at the ground. The Hokage had forced him to keep quiet, not to reveal the identity of the child, said the shadow. The shadow of the fire illuminates the town, the three murmured at the same time. That's what he said, right? Hana sobbed, still on her knees, crying, and with her hands covering her face. That was Minato's favorite phrase. The ninja nodded, hesitating. He wanted to tell the whole truth, but he couldn't. He owed his loyalty to the Hyuga clan, but more than anything to the Hokage. Hana sobbed harder, trying to stop the tears, and as she was on her knees, she let out a piercing cry, bringing her hands to her swollen belly. "Hana!" the two Hyugas yelled. The woman screamed again with all her might. Hisashi instantly went to the hospital to call a doctor, opened a door, and ran into Rin, finishing giving Naruto a bottle. What caught his attention was that when the girl turned to see who had entered, she had scratches on her arms, a bruise on his cheek, and his left leg was bleeding. Even so, he did not seem to care about his injuries. This wound, Sakura glanced sideways at Naruto. She didn't need to say more to realize that the villagers had done this to her for the simple fact of taking care of Naruto. The blonde just clenched his fists in anger. Hisashi barely gave him one last look and continued looking for a doctor. They were surprised to see that they were still in the same scene. The Kaibai wanted to show them something about Rin, and when she settled the little blonde in her cradle, the door opened abruptly for three women to enter with kunais in their hands. The brunette tensed, holding a kunai in her trembling hands. She wasted no time in front of the crib. "What do you want?" she asked. "Kill that monster," answered one of them with venom in her voice. "No, I'll let them pass." The ninjas pounced on the chestnut, hitting her and slashing her with their kunais without showing an ounce of mercy, somehow trying to get her to let go of her guard and to move away so that they could put their hands on the child that she was protecting with such bravery, but against all odds she continued to defend him, even in danger of death. After they got tired of beating her and saw that they had no chance, they left without wasting time, giving them contemptuous looks and warning her not to go to the funeral of the Hokage and his wife in the afternoon. The little boy woke up crying. Rin was all hurt, with her eyes on the ground, full of cuts and blows, and crying silently without complaining, but as soon as she heard it, she crawled and got up as best she could to calm him down. She took him in her arms, pressing him against her chest and biting her tongue to keep from sobbing. He had to be strong. "I'm sorry, Naruto. I'm so sorry," she murmured, "but it doesn't matter. I'll always protect you, because you're the only thing left of my master and Kushina-san. Because you will be a great ninja like they always wanted. Because their fiery will now rest with you." The girl cooed once more to Naruto, and then everything disappeared, and once again they found themselves in front of the fox's cage. The rain fell heavily. The day was gloomy, as if he mourned the loss like all the villagers, like the whole village that gathered around the coffins of Minato and Kushina. Both together. The redhead was wearing a red dress with white sleeves, her hands crossed over her chest, intertwining them, and a necklace that had the symbol of Konoha, a gift from Minato when they became engaged. Kushina had her hands under her chest, above her swollen belly, which everyone believed was still her son. Minato was dressed the same as always, with his characteristic Konoha clothes and the white cape with red flames that characterized him with the Yondaime Hokage. In his also clasped hands, he had the necklace with the symbol of the whirlpool that Kushina gave him when they became engaged. Both together, even in death. They were very well groomed, all his friends had taken care of that. They looked like they were sleeping, but they weren't. They wouldn't open their eyes anymore, they would sleep forever. They would never be able to see Minato's calm smiles anymore. They would not be able to listen to his advice or admire his strength. He would never again defend Konoha, his flame had gone out. They couldn't see Kushina's mischievous smiles again either. Konoha would be too quiet without her squeals, sad and desolate without his teasing. She would never again open her eyes and say her characteristic Titebane. They would no longer illuminate the village. They were gone, even though it was hard to accept and even though it hurt and broke everyone's heart. They were dead, having sacrificed themselves for their village. Hana and Makoto caressed Kushina's cheek, leaving a few roses in her coffin, before they sealed it, mourning the early death of their friend. What would she say if she were alive? "Don't give up so easily, Titebane. In Minato, I will always light up Konoha. I'll be the first woman to become Hokage. I want everyone to recognize me and also become a great hostage. I am Kushina Uzumaki, the bloody Habanera, useless bunch, Titebane. Stop despising me." The rain stopped, and they were buried together as they always wanted to be, even after death, because even if they were no longer there, their love would still be alive, just like the price of their sacrifice. "We'll move on," Hana murmured, sobbing. "Otherwise, you would surely be disappointed in us, right, Kushina?" Makoto cried next to him. Their husbands behind them nodded to their words. Another half-hour passed before they returned to their homes, and when there was no one else, Rin arrived with Naruto in her arms, looking at the graves. Minato Namikaze, Kushina Namikaze. Normally they always gave him his last name, even if he had married Minato, but since Uzumaki was already Naruto's official last name, no one wanted him to ask unnecessary questions when he grew up. "I swear to you, Sensei, Kushina-san, that I will protect Naruto until the end." Until the end. None of the four uttered words, they were too shocked by everything that had happened. The deaths of Minato and Kushina were the cause of all the misfortunes that were coming. And again, they were in front of the cage. The Kaibai was looking at Naruto with a lot of interest. He had his eyes downcast. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. He didn't remember her, at least not enough, because he was already sure that Rin was the girl who appeared in his childhood dreams. In the end, if there was a person who took care of him as a child, someone who protected him from all the hatred of the village, someone who cares about your well-being, that little girl took care of you the first 6 months, the Kaibai related in a bored tone. She protected you from all the villagers, even from your parents' friends. For everyone who ever tried to kill you. Then they sent him on a mission. They left you with that man, the owner of the store where you stay more than at home. Tuchai, Naruto muttered in surprise. Yes, that man and the brat he has as a daughter took care of you while Yondaime's student was away, and she never came back. I don't know exactly what happened, but I was able to catch something. And when he stopped talking, they found themselves in a forest, looking directly at Rin on her knees and tied up, her team members being threatened by enemy ninjas from the village hidden in the clouds. The brunette looked at what seemed to be the leader with decision and fear. He approached with interest. "Isn't this Yondaime Hokage student?" "Yes, it is. It seems that we have a good mutiny." He approached with a cruel smile. "Beautiful. Is it true that the Hokage and his wife died in the Kaibai attack?" He didn't see danger in that. He just nodded, holding back the tears. "And what about the child?" "It is assumed that the Hokage's wife was pregnant." "Is he alive?" "No, he died," he answered with a broken voice. He looked at her suspiciously. "You know, I don't believe you." "He died too," shouted one of his teammates. "All three died." "No one has asked you," another enemy ninja said, hitting him. You are the student of the Hokage, you should know more things. If that child survived, it would be perfect revenge against Konoha. We will check if you are telling the truth. She made seals to lock him in Genjutsu. He winced. He could hold out for a while, but it wouldn't be long, and sooner or later they would get the truth out of him. No, she wouldn't allow it. She had promised to protect Naruto even if it meant his life. Freeing herself from his grip, she punched him in the face and quickly raised a kunai. She heard vaguely how the one who was interrogating her yelled to stop the others. He seemed to guess her intentions and knew that she was keeping something. "I'm sorry, Kakashi, Naruto," she sobbed, stabbing her kunai into her heart. She fell to the ground dead, just as the enemy ninjas sensed chakras approaching at full speed. They unceremoniously killed all the remaining ninjas and left one to die before leaving. Kakashi was the first to arrive. He was stunned to see the body of his friend on the ground, with a large blood stain on the heart. A kunai pierced it. "No, Rin, no," he yelled excitedly. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw Rin on the ground, dead, with a blood stain on her chest and her chocolate eyes empty of life. He couldn't believe it. She had killed herself so they wouldn't find out that she was the son of the Yondaime Hokage. "Sacrifice," Sakura murmured in surprise. She sacrificed herself. The sacrifices are painful. Hinata muttered sadly, remembering her uncle's sacrifice to avoid the war when she was kidnapped. She understood all that better than anyone. She understood that pain. Because after the death of her uncle, her mother became worse, colder, and more indifferent. "Very well, stop with sentimental and stupid scenes, interrupt the Kaibai, follow what you want to see. How the rivalry between the Uchiha and Hyuga clans is born 1 year after the day Konoha attacked." Her voice faded, as did the place where they were. They appeared in the Uchiha neighborhood. Hana Hyuga was entering with a smile towards the main house. Although she no longer had the same smile as before, nor did her eyes shine in the same way, there was still so much sadness. Hana went to the house. Mikoto and Fugaku were nowhere to be found. There was no one in the main mansion. It seemed strange to him. He walked slowly. Mikoto was supposed to be waiting for him. She had sent him a message to come see her. A figure passed quickly in front of her, a figure that, out of curiosity, she followed until she reached a room unknown to her, a room in which that stranger left some scrolls and left. Hana was about to leave. It wasn't good to meddle in things that weren't her or her clan. But something caught her eye. The Uchiha clan to power. The title of the scroll left behind by the ninja he had followed. "The Uchiha clan is in power," Sasuke repeated, who had remained silent for the last few hours in which they had been watching everything that had happened. "What the hell is that?" "We'll know as soon as we keep watching," Sakura murmured next to him. They didn't know he had the scroll since Hana read it silently, but as she continued reading, her eyes widened with disbelief and anger, while tears began to fall from her eyes. Finally, the scroll fell to the ground. The Byakugan was so angry. Activated, with which he went around the room looking for something specific, and he took out as many scrolls that he also read. "Poop Dedet, the attack of the Kaibai," he murmured, crumpling the last scroll in his hands. "Hindrances, Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage." He clenched his fists, savoring the bitter taste of betrayal. "Damn the Uchiha," she yelled angrily, picking up all the scrolls she had been reading and walking out of the room and out of the Uchiha neighborhood. Before the scene faded, they could see a ninja in an ANBU suit laughing quietly. "It's worked out," he mocked before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. If it had been real, Sasuke would have jumped on him. Whatever Hana Hyuga had found was not real, at least not from the Uchiha clan. The only thing they were doing was taking away all their support, leaving them alone, and cornering them. How could they not want them to rebel? It's as if they were looking for the Uchiha to rebel, Sakura muttered, looking at Sasuke, reaching the same conclusion, as if everything was a trap, Sasuke muttered hatefully. Then even the Uchiha clan's rebellion was planned, Sakura said in surprise. "Why, it can't be true, Titebeo," Naruto denied. "The Uchiha and Hyuga are the most powerful clans in the ninja world." Hinata intervened timidly, "But the most desired has always been the S-Sharingan. They just wanted get rid of us using any excuse." Sasuke finished speaking with an unfunny laugh. "Pay attention, brats," the Kaiba yelled. "Keep doing your best, haha." Hana, Hayashi, and Hisashi were walking with an imperious step to Ikaraku Ramen, where they could feel the chakras of Mikoto and Fugaku. The two walked by, reminiscing about the old days. As soon as he saw Hana appear, Mikoto stood up with a gentle smile. "Hana, what a surprise." He greeted me. "I was just thinking about going to look." His reply was abruptly cut off when, without any subtlety, Hana threw a kunai at her that brushed her cheek and left a trickle of blood behind her. Some black hair fell into the air. Mikoto's eyes widened in surprise. Fugaku got up from him instantly, furious and with the Sharingan rolling in his eyes. They had all gone silent. Mayim, who was next to her father, looked at them with surprise. She had been about to go see Naruto, whom she had left asleep in her room, when that happened. "Hana, what?" The Hyuga looked at him with contempt and, with a contemptuous grimace, threw some scrolls in his face, the same ones he had been reading before. "What is this?" Mikoto muttered under her breath in a hurt voice. "See for yourself, although I don't know why you pretend to be surprised," he hissed at her with hate. Mikoto and Fugaku hesitated but then complied, and when they read the contents, their eyes widened in surprise. "Not true," Mikoto said instantly, "not everything." "Not you, Hana, not you. You can't believe we brought the Kaibai. Is there any other explanation for those scrolls then?" Hayashi intervened with a cold voice, looking directly at Fugaku. The Uchiha clicked his tongue. We were not the culprits, because everyone insists on believing that. He yelled furiously. Those scrolls were in his house. Hana screeched wildly. We are friends. They can't trust us. Mikoto then yelled, sobbing. Our friendship. You have always been too ambitious. The Uchiha clan has always wanted more than what they had. Why wouldn't we believe that? Hisashi growled furiously. Hana, Mikoto began to say pleadingly. The Hyuga looked at him with hate. She hadn't wanted to believe it, but there it was, in those scrolls with the Uchiha seal, all the plans to conquer Konoha with the Uchiha in command, everything to overthrow Minato from his post. Betrayal, that was all she could think of, betrayal. They were supposed to be friends. How could they? Hana yelled. How could they betray Minato and Kushina? They were our friends. Then Mikoto yelled angrily, you can't believe that. We would never hurt them. Traitor, the Hyuga exclaimed without listening. You and your bloody clan are the disgrace of Konoha. Shut up, Hyuga, the Uchiha yelled, fed up with the accusations. Hana stepped forward and slapped him across the face. Instantly, Fugaku stepped forward, but Hayashi intercepted him. The two began to yell as well, driven only by the pain of betrayal and distrust, breaking the ties that once unified them. The bonds of friendship they had. Hisashi tried in vain to separate them, only to end up in the fight as well. Yoshino and Shikaku, who had also been silently observing how the friendship between the Uchihas and the Hyugas was being destroyed, held Mikoto in time because she had been about to pounce on what she had once called a friend. The Sharingan glowed with anger in her eyes. She wondered because they also distrusted her. Why did everyone turn their backs on them? They were not guilty of the fox attack. This is over, Hana yelled. From now on, we will be rivals. She gave him an angry, cold, merciless look, and I won't rest until the Uchihas bite the dust. Now that we are enemies, we will see which clan is stronger, the Uchiha or the Hyuga. Hisashi and Hayashi separated from Fugaku, and for a moment they looked into each other's eyes, remembering their past, their childhood, when they were friends. But it's all over, their ties were broken. Hana turned her back on them, as did the other Hyuga, and they walked away without looking back, turning their backs on them, like the whole village. Fugaku and Mikoto stood there, absorbing those words and listening to all the murmurs behind them. They are to blame. The Uchihas are too ambitious. Yes, they are a curse. The Hyugas did well to cut ties with them. They have no forgiveness, ambition and power, that's why they betrayed their friends. Mikoto held back her tears before running to the Uchiha neighborhood along with Fugaku. It was the only place where they would be safe now, with their family. Because they no longer had friends. And that happened, said the Kaibai, letting them see his cage again. From there they became rivals. Always competing to see who was stronger, always thinking of being the best, without feelings, without emotions. And no weaknesses, Hinata murmured. Stop being so weak. You are the heiress of the Hyuga clan. Have some pride and keep training. Stop disappointing us, Hinata. You have to be the best, better than any Uchiha. Now he understood his parents' obsession with training. That was despicable, Naruto said seriously, what they did to the Uchiha. I'll kill Danzo as soon as we get out of this damned illusion, Sasuke yelled furiously. And don't you dare stop me, Naruto, or your Sakura, because I'll kill them. Neither of them said anything. This time, he was absolutely right with his hatred. Do what you want, I only want Madara. Now I'll let you see the latest. The day Hana Hyuga and Mikoto Uchiha reconciled by recognizing the son of their friends, Naruto looked at him suspiciously, the day of the Uchiha clan massacre, and finally the death of Hana Hyuga. Did they recognize me? Naruto muttered in surprise. How so? They appeared in Konoha, in the market. They didn't know why they were there until they saw Mikoto Uchiha shopping. He was already finishing his shopping when he spotted Hana. The Hyuga no longer had anything sweet, it was just cold and hard. It's been a long time since they spoke, and that day was definitely not going to be any different. He was about to leave when he heard a commotion, and a yellow blur passed by, laughing as he dodged those who were chasing them. She was invaded by a feeling of deja vu. When she was a child, she always saw a blur, but it was red. Kushina, ahaha, they'll never be able to catch me. The boy stuck out his tongue at them. It was Naruto, the boy who had the nine-tailed fox inside him, the boy who was looking for trouble wherever he went. Just like Kushina in her time. He shook his head. What was she thinking? There were a few times that she saw him. In fact, she was sure that it was the third time that she had seen him in those 8 years. She had never been so close to him, she had not even heard him speak. Damned brat, said one, lunging at him. It takes them a lot to catch me, Titebeo. She laughed out loud, her blue eyes shining mischievously. They're useless. Ahaha, who do you think I am? I'm Kushina Uzumaki. They're a long way from being able to catch me, you bunch of useless Titebane. Mikoto parted her lips, they were so similar to Kushina's words. Her words, Sakura said understandingly, are very similar to your mother in character. No, impossible, Mikoto thought incredulously. You'll see, one day they'll realize that I'm someone, the boy shouted in a scandalous way, and they'll stop despising me because I'll be Hokage. I will be the first woman to become Hokage. And then everyone will stop looking down on me, stop seeing me as a whirlpool ninja, and accept me as a Konoha ninja. I want everyone in the village to recognize me and also become a great Hokage. Mikoto and Hana seemed to hear again the words that Minato and Kushina once uttered at the academy. That day, Naruto whispered, if he remembered that day perfectly, is the day of the Uchiha clan massacre, Databao. Forgetting everything, they watched the scene with more interest, noticing that Mikoto and Hana were looking at Naruto as if they were seeing a ghost. It's the truth, Databao. Naruto let go with a defiant look. I'll be Hokage. I will fight until the end. Because that is my way of the ninja. The last thing he had said was almost crying. He walked away from them. Hana approached her. For a second, they didn't know what to say to each other, but she hugged him out of nowhere and began to cry. He ... is ... Naruto, Mikoto whispered, still not believing it. How are we so stupid? He is equal to them. He is a yellow energy swirl, just like Minato and Kushina. How did we get so blind? Mikoto and Hana looked at him with the same sweetness as before and said, let's fix things. And then we can help him. They have to know that he is the son of Minato and Kushina. No doubt, that's why Rin protected him. She knew the truth. Of course I do. Tomorrow, come to my house with Hayashi and we'll fix everything at once and we'll talk to the Hokage. She nodded enthusiastically. She was about to leave when the Uchiha took her arm. If something happens, promise you'll take care of him. What? Just do it. It's okay. But it is not necessary. We will both protect you. We will reward all our mistakes. I knew it. She knew it, Sasuke said, surprised. She knew what Itachi was going to do. You can't underestimate a mother's love, Sakura said sadly. Yes, so. Hinata clenched her fists. They found out the truth only to die hours later. Everything is horrible, Titebeo. Mikoto almost ran to the Uchiha neighborhood, prepared lunch, and gave Sasuke his obento, wishing him luck. He told Fugaku that she had just found out, and although her husband's mood cooled more than usual, she smiled sweetly. She was going to convince him, maybe there was a chance. Hours later, they heard fighting and screaming outside and the sound of bodies falling. Mikoto tensed, and Fugaku stood up and opened the sliding doors to see with horror and disbelief how his own son had just thrown 2 bodies to the ground without regard. What? I'm sorry, father. It's for the good of Konoha. She launched herself towards him, but Fugaku managed to respond quickly. He didn't know how long the fight lasted. It could have been minutes, hours, days. The only thing he was aware of was that Mikoto was watching everything without saying anything. He dragged himself into the house, next to her, mortally wounded. Mikoto stroked her hair as he made her put her head on her lap. We pushed him to that, he whispered. It was inevitable. Did you know? Yes, I'm his mother. Itachi entered the room with his katana drawn. He looked at his mother without understanding. Why didn't you ask for help? She asked, whispering. For what? Mikoto said calmly, this has been planned by the council. I doubt the Hokage is involved in this. They wouldn't help us. And it wouldn't be fair to involve the Hyuga in something we started. I'm sorry, Itachi. I'm so sorry. He lowered his head. You should not ask for forgiveness. On the contrary, it must be mine. It's our fault. She gave the dying Fugaku a kiss on the forehead. I'm ready. Despite everything, Fugaku muttered with the last of his strength, you're my pride. In S.Su.Ke.2. Take care of Sasuke, Mikoto murmured softly, closing her eyes. Itachi gritted his teeth and raised the katana, killing his mother. She fell to the ground with a soft blow, and Fugaku was on top of her. Swallowing all the pain he felt for killing them, Itachi stared at them. He had destroyed his soul when he killed them, but there was no turning back. Sasuke closed his eyes. He preferred not to say anything. He had just learned the whole truth. He had to think about his decisions. In the end, his parents knew everything, and despite being close to death, they did not ask for revenge. Just sorry. Why did everything have to end like this? At the Hyuga mansion, Hana gently ruffled Hinata's hair, giving her a sweet and affectionate smile. Go to sleep, daughter, you must be very tired. The little girl gave him a shocked look before nodding and going to her bedroom. Her mother was different. Hayashi looked at the scene with a frown. What's wrong with you? Hashi. Hana hugged him, kissed him, and left him stunned. Hana was behaving like in the past. What the hell? I've discovered something. Together with Mikoto, we have a chance, just one chance, to make amends for all our mistakes and to put aside all the hatred. Naruto is. An ANBU interrupted the chat. Excuse me, Hyuga-sama, Hyuga-san. I come with tragic news. Exactly half an hour ago, the corpses of the entire Uchiha clan were discovered, including Fugaku and Mikoto Uchiha, all killed by Uchiha Itachi, who fled the village in an unknown direction, becoming a traitor and a renegade ninja. He topped our list in the bingo book. Hana looked at him, not wanting to understand that news, as did Hayashi. What? She managed to say weakly. The Uchiha clan has been massacred, with the only survivor being Uchiha Sasuke. And then Hana ran, excited, with Hayashi behind her. It couldn't be true. It wasn't true. Not again, not another friend. She had already lost many friends, including Hisashi, and she could never fix things with him. And she couldn't even tell Hayashi about Naruto. But when he got there, he found Kakashi walking out with blood on his hands. Attic shook his head forlornly. No. Hana pushed him aside, crying when she saw the symbol of the fan carved in wood full of blood, the symbol that was at the entrance of the Uchiha neighborhood, and she kept running, dodging the bodies of all the dead Uchihas. He abruptly entered the room where the Hokage and the advisors, along with some ANBUs, were collecting the corpses of Mikoto and Fugaku. No, he cried, Mikoto. The elders gave him scathing glances. She glared at them. You are the culprits, he yelled. Damn bastards. A pain in her belly made her double over in pain, screaming. Right away, she could feel Hayashi reach out and grab her before she blacked out on her. Hayashi paced back and forth, waiting and taking in the news from the Uchiha clan. First Minato and Kushina, then Hisashi. Now Fugaku and Mikoto have been killed by their own son. In Hana, a nurse came out. Relatives of Mrs. Hana Hyuga. "I am your husband," he said instantly. The nurse gave him a sad look. "I'm so sorry." Apparently the lady suffered a great shock. She lost the child she was expecting. "Child," Hayashi muttered, stunned. Hayashi was speechless. At this moment, she is heartbroken. "We don't understand why, but we are losing her. I'm very sorry. The lady has lost the will to live. You can come see her if you wish. I don't think she will spend the night." And he left. Hayashi was plunged into pain. Was he going to be left alone? Little by little, his friends and his wife were leaving. He went into her room only to see her gasping for breath and sobbing over the loss of her son, the Hyuga looking haggard and weak. She gave him a sweet look, like before all those tragedies happened, and made her unrecognizable. She shakily reached up her hand to take his. "If you had arranged things with," Hisashi murmured with his eyelids closing, "if they hadn't died, if Minato and Kushina, they..." Hayashi called softly, gesturing for him to come closer, but the man ignored him, showing the pain that he felt. Seizing when he saw the person he loved die, take care of, too, Naruto, he couldn't tell her the name of the person he wanted him to take care of. "And I did not spend the night. He died the day after the Uchiha clan massacre." Now Hayashi was alone, with no friends, no brother, no wife, no one but his daughters. Why did all this have to happen? If Minato and Kushina were still alive, none of that would have happened. They had sacrificed themselves so Konoha would be safe. Rin had died so Naruto wouldn't become a weapon against Konoha. Hisashi had sacrificed himself so war wouldn't break out against Konoha, and the Uchiha clan had been exterminated for Konoha's sake. For Konoha to live in peace, the sacrifices had been many, necessary and painful sacrifices. But everything would have been different, if only they were alive. Or, at the end of the memories, they found themselves back where they were, with their parents in front of them and Kushina beating Hayashi and Fugaku up. With everyone laughing, being friends when everything was different. However, all that the future brought with the deaths of Minato and Kushina was not at all encouraging. Sakura, Hinata, and Naruto had tears in their eyes. Sasuke did everything possible to avoid them. Now they understood everything, absolutely everything. "I won't let that happen, Titebeo," Naruto said softly, holding Hinata's hand and closing his hand around the warm one of the Hyuga. "That won't happen. Not now that we have them with us." "I'm with you, Naruto," Sakura whispered, wiping away her tears. "I too," Hinata said softly, tears in her eyes and her cheeks flushing red. "And I, Dobe," Sasuke muttered angrily, "won't lose my parents again. We have to talk to the Hokage, Dadabeo," Naruto yelled, interrupting his mother's screams. "What for, Titebane?" "Right now we'll start changing everything, Titebeo," Naruto yelled with determination. "We'll erase all the events in our future, change the past, and rebuild the future." Mikoto, Fugaku, Minato, Kushina, Hana, Hayashi, Hisashi, and Tsunade looked at them in surprise. What were they referring to? Naruto took a step, still holding Hinata's hand. He was so busy trying to move forward to go to the Hokage Tower that he didn't realize it. Instead, Hinata did. She seemed to wake up and looked red-faced at their clasped hands. She stammered a few words that Sakura, who was closest to her, couldn't understand and instinctively followed the blonde. Minato and Hana raised their eyebrows when they caught that detail that the others, so busy deciphering the blonde's words, didn't notice. And for the first time, Minato began to think of something that he hadn't taken into account before, mainly when he saw that decision gleam in Naruto's blue eyes, that gleam that he was used to seeing in Kushina's purplish eyes. He looked from one to the other suspiciously. Was Naruto the son of Kushina? Sasuke and Sakura made a move to follow them. "Hold it right there, Titebane," Kushina screeched without moving from his spot. The redhead looked ahead with a frown and without any peace of mind. She was exasperated by all the mystery that those 4 boys were involved in, and they might have said that she was clueless and all that, but she had caught something new in the 2 of her friends when they looked at Hinata and Sasuke. It was something different, something that made her angry because they knew something that she didn't, and she didn't like that. Hayashi and Fugaku got up battered from the ground, cleaning their wounds and looking at the Uzumaki with a frown. Naruto stopped instantly at his mother's order. He looked forward impatiently, noticing how his mother was still behind him with his back turned. "What, Titebeo?" he muttered angrily. "Do not leave here without giving us explanations, Titebane." Tsunade smirked. At least someone agreed with her, and of course it had to be Kushina, only she could understand her. She turned to see how the 4 of them had their backs to them. Her honey eyes lasted a second looking at Naruto and Hinata's entwined hands, and then she snorted when she saw that Sakura looked at her warily. There was something about that little girl. It was as if Sakura knew her and knew exactly what her reactions would be. "Not his problem," Sasuke hissed. Kushina didn't flinch. "Watch your words, child," he huffed coldly, still without turning around. "We all deserve an explanation." Naruto muttered a few expletives. Sakura exchanged glances with Hinata, and Sasuke looked nowhere in particular in anger. "No," Naruto started to say. "Either they start talking or I kill them," Kushina threatened, finally turning around. They did the same, only to see how the redhead's purplish eyes turned red as blood and how her hair began to rise in 9 locks in a way reminiscent of the Kaibai's tales. Whether they wanted it or not, it was an image of something chilling, and from what they knew, Kushina Uzumaki had been able to control the Kaibai since he was 14 years old. She was not on the same level as Naruto, but she had the experience Naruto lacked, and that was definitely a point in the girl's favor. The younger blonde swallowed loudly without knowing what to do or say. His mother was scary. "What's going on?" Hayashi, Hisashi, and Fugaku asked without understanding anything. "Men had to be," Mikoto and Hana said with a roll of their eyes. Minato shook his head. He did understand everything. He had also noticed something different about Mikoto and Hana. He didn't ask because it was none of her business, but Kushina wasn't like him. She liked to know everything. Minato glanced at Naruto again. "Aye, it's not your problem, Titebeo. They look like they want to die young, Titeben," Kushina muttered as she moved towards them. Minato stopped him, shaking his head. "Kushina, that's it." "But, Minato, enough," she ordered, and this time her voice had a ring of authority that made the redhead fall silent, though she glared at them and then crossed her arms indignantly. Minato curved his lips in an amused smile when he saw the gesture of his girlfriend. He turned his gaze to Naruto and added a serious gesture. "You know, Naruto, so far, you haven't told us what your last names are." The younger blonde opened and closed his mouth, feeling between a rock and a hard place, much worse than with his mother's death threat. Sakura shook her head with a wry smile, subtle, direct, and more effective than a threat. The pink-haired girl understood the double intention behind her words. The future 4th Hokage didn't need threats to corner someone. "We know that Sasuke is an Uchiha, that Hinata is a Hyuga, and that Sakura is a Haruno, but you haven't told us anything other than your name," Minato continued, scrutinizing him closely. He had already guessed everything. It wasn't very difficult when he thought everything through and put the pieces together, but he wanted to confirm it. Yo Hugh, Minato urged. Kushina and Tsunade recovered the smiles they had lost when Minato parried Uzumaki's threat. Now they understood why he had done it, and they knew from experience that Minato's words and his logic were more effective than any death threat. Fugaku, Hayashi, and Hisashi still didn't know anything. Mikoto didn't pay attention to that. She was more busy remembering her son's cold words to her pink-haired girl and her equally cold response. Hana just looked at the intertwined hands of her daughter and Naruto, and she swore to herself that she wouldn't stop until she joined them and saw her daughter happy with her. Naruto looked at Hinata, Sakura, and Sasuke, then back at his father, and when the two pairs of blue eyes met, he knew that his father knew the truth, or at least had already sensed it. "To do. Let's run away, Titebeo," he yelled in alarm. He still wasn't prepared to tell them the truth. In an almost non-existent movement, he lifted the blushing Hinata into his arms and disappeared, but not in a puff of smoke as was normal among ninjas, but simply disappeared, almost the same way Minato disappeared, only Naruto didn't use a seal. A drop fell on their heads, all of them. Sakura and Sasuke were still there and just snorted at Naruto's stupidity. But looking back at the others, especially Kushina and Tsunade's scowls and Minato's staring gaze, they mentally agreed with Naruto. Sometimes running away is the best remedy. Oh, Naruto stopped abruptly when he was far enough away from his parents and everyone else. He looked around and realized that they were at training ground number 22. He was the furthest away and the one quite close to the river. He looked down at his arms as he felt the slight weight of the Hyuga and smiled. Hinata had flushed cheeks and was playing with her fingers. It was a miracle he hadn't passed out yet, and he thought it must be because Naruto's action caught him by surprise. The last thing he thought was that he would flee the scene. "You're red, Hinata." The blonde brought his face closer to Hyuga's, noticing for the first time that hers reddened more at its proximity. He had never noticed it, perhaps because before he worried more about what Sakura said or about fighting with Sasuke. After he left, he only thought about his training and returning Sasuke to the village. With the war, he had no head at all, but now it was different. He really did realize what he was doing to Hinata. He smiled slightly. Hinata was pretty, delicate, and a good ninja. It was a compliment that she liked him. For her part, Hinata tried to breathe and keep her eyes open. Every second that passed, Naruto continued to trespass on her personal space, and that only managed to bring out her nervousness, although she had managed to behave more normally since she declared herself in the battle against him. Pain couldn't avoid her body's reactions, especially if Naruto got so close to her and if she was in his arms. "Hey Naruto-kun. What's up, Hinata, Dadabeo? Hedo, why you put me down?" she murmured, looking to the side. "Oh, of course, Titebeo," she announced, smiling and gently leaving him on the ground. He scratched the back of his neck nervously, looking around. Now he didn't know what to say. It was strange. For a while, he wanted to thank him for what he had done in the battle against Pain, but if he did, he would bring up the issue of the declaration, and he wasn't sure it was a topic to be discussed at that very moment. Not when Hinata had her eyes downcast and her cheeks red. "I think we should find Sasuke and Sakura to go see the Hokage," Naruto muttered. Hinata nodded weakly. The two began to walk close to each other, and by pure instinct, Naruto grabbed Hinata's hand to make her move forward. Neither of them realized exactly what moment it had been. They were too distracted, and the warmth that enveloped them at the gesture made them forget everything, absolutely everything. The river seemed delicious for a good bath, like the warm rays of the sun. The singing of the birds resounded in the background of the environment and made them lose themselves in their thoughts as the wind caressed their faces. The environment around them really took away all the weight they had for everything that had happened. There was no war or anything. Everything was easier. This is different, Hinata whispered more to herself than to Naruto. Yes, Titebeo, Naruto replied with a big smile. It's the life we always wanted, where all our parents are alive. The future is really disastrous, Titebeo. Hinata bit her lower lip, glancing at the blonde and smiling happily to see that Naruto was beginning to be himself again. When he saw Kakashi die, Naruto literally went mad with pain. Fortunately, he had not lost control of the Kaibai, but if he lost a good part of his control over himself, he defeated Madara, killing him mercilessly and then continuing with Kabuto and reaching Sasuke. And what confirmed that this time he really felt pain and thirst for revenge was that he was willing to kill Sasuke, even if it meant breaking his promise. And she had seen him, the pain in his beautiful blue eyes, the glint of resentment, and she hadn't liked it at all, because he had always been like a sun, illuminating everyone with his glow, giving joy and hope. That was why she had been with Sakura, trying to stop her from killing Sasuke, because if she did, he would only destroy her soul. She brushed a strand from her face and tucked it behind her ear. And now that they were there, in the past, where they could see their parents and see the strength of the friendship that united them with the Hyuga and the Uchiha, Naruto had once again recovered the characteristic shine of his blue eyes. The resentment that had stained him was fading, being replaced by happiness. That was good. What do you think we should do, Hinata? Naruto had stopped and was looking at the river with melancholy. There were a few times when he got serious. At that moment, he was like this, there was no trace of the innocence and childish posture that were almost always present. About changing the future. I think it's for the best, Hinata murmured softly, directing her gaze to Naruto's back, feeling all the urge to comfort him, but standing firm in her place. She couldn't expect Naruto to love her overnight. She just had to be patient and fight for that love. Yeah, we can change the past. We can avoid wars. Even at this moment, Akatsuki isn't strong enough. Naruto turned to look at her in surprise. He had completely forgotten that. Clear. He just had to ask the Sanin about the students he trained in the Rain Village and see what chance he had of rescuing Ahiko from death. That way neither Nagato nor Konan would be after Madara's service. There were so many things they could avoid. You're great, Hinata, Titebeo. She yelled happily. That, she said without understanding. She cocked her head in curiosity, which faded when she realized Naruto's intentions. The blonde was so happy about the Hyuga idea that he let go of her hand, lifted it up, and spun it in the air. Hinata felt the air escape her in surprise, and he gasped. All he could do was hold Naruto tight to keep him from falling. Aha, the blonde kept thinking about it without noticing anything, especially that when he did so, he walked without balance and ended up falling into the river along with the surprised Hinata. They kicked themselves out of the water, breathing hard to calm themselves. Oh, Hinata got out of the river while he shook his hair. She was drenched from head to toe, and to top it off, her cheeks were completely flushed. Nervously, she looked at Naruto, who was still in the water, laughing for no apparent reason. Seconds later, he gathered chakra from her feet and stood on the water, walking towards her. The Hyuga looked away from Naruto's wet clothes and concentrated on taking off the jacket that was heavy from all the water. She blushed when she was left with only the polo shirt, so she let her long hair fall on her shoulders and chest. I'm sorry, Titebeo. Naruto chuckled nervously. No. It's in nothing. She stuttered very badly, her sweet voice sounded shaky. She was on the verge of fainting and tried very hard not to look at Naruto anymore. Which he didn't get, he shyly turned his gaze to the blonde, only to see him take off his ninja bandana, ruffle his golden hair, and shake off the water. He also took off his jacket. Hinata parted her lips, flushed and already fearing that she would really faint. Hinata, I didn't mean to, Titebeo, Naruto continued, turning around and adjusting his ninja bandana. He smiled at her and said, I really didn't see where I was going, ha. He kept laughing. The Hyuga nodded, trying not to forget what it was like to breathe. Really, the sight of Naruto smiling at her like that made her very, very nervous, and she was almost sure that she wouldn't last long awake. She had to find some way to escape from there. Yes, sometimes running away is the best remedy. Naruto, Hinata, Sakura was running towards them, along with Sasuke, although he was walking at a moderate pace and with an irritated and furious expression. The pink-haired girl arrived and tried to catch her breath. She and Sasuke had to hide from everyone, especially Kushina, who had been chasing them everywhere. Now they understood what Hayashi and Fugaku felt after being chased by the Uzumaki. Your mother is scary, Sakura exclaimed. Sasuke huffed, crossing his arms and looking up at the Hokage Tower. He didn't care in the slightest what Naruto and Hinata had been doing to get them wet. Right now they only had to worry about going to see the third. Let's get out of here quick, Sakura said in alarm. She took Hinata's hand to make her run. I never thought there was someone more fearsome than Tsunade Shishio. Let's go before he finds us. Piro, Sakura-chan. But nothing, Baka. To the Hokage Tower. The pink-haired girl glanced at Hinata, smiling when she saw that she was red and without a jacket. She hesitated for a moment. The Hyuga had a spectacular body that made all the boys stare at her, all except the two behind her, but it must still be uncomfortable for her to go like this when that pole completely stuck to her. As they passed one of the nearest houses, she picked up a jacket that was hanging on her string and tossed it to Hinata. "Sakura-san, just put it on." The pink-haired girl cut him off, speeding up her pace quickly. They managed to reach the Hawkage Tower just in time. The bad luck was that Jiraiya and Tsunade were there. The blonde gave them a murderous look before controlling herself and continuing by her master's side. Orochimaru was training Anko at the time, which is why she wasn't there. "You guys," Jiraiya said in surprise. Naruto looked at his teacher longingly, then shook his head and looked at the third. "We need to talk." "No," Tsunade cut him off furiously. "Okay," said the third, scowling at his student. "But they must go," Sakura demanded, looking at the Sanin. "No, this time," said the third. "If they want to tell me, they will tell me with my students present." The four of them exchanged glances and decided that perhaps it was better that the Sanin at least knew the truth. Having them on their side could make everything better. Sasuke crossed his arms and leaned against the door. He wouldn't say anything. Naruto took a step forward, with Hinata taking his hand to give him strength. Sakura, just like Sasuke, was left behind. The moment of truth had arrived. "Oh," Kushina's red eyes narrowed, glaring around her furiously. But she couldn't see them up close, even though she had been a few meters away from that pink-haired girl and that boy who looked so much like Mikoto but had the same sour character as Fugaku. As soon as she thought that, she abruptly stopped her search and let her hair fall back on her shoulders, while her eyes returned to the purple hue that characterized them. "Kushina," Minato yelled, coming to where she was. The blonde frowned and grabbed his girlfriend's arm. "Stop chasing them, they won't tell you anything. They come from the future, Titebane," Kushina murmured with her eyes widening. She had just understood something that explained why her two friends looked more animated and happy. "They are our friends' children?" she asked incredulously. Minato sighed and released her. Apparently it had taken a long time for her to also realize the truth that was before her eyes. Her eyes drifted to a brown-haired boy who was running merrily near them. Takeshi Haruno. The boy was distractedly eating some dangos, so he didn't realize that a pink-haired woman was approaching him and punching him. The boy began to complain and fight with the girl. Kushina also inspected the peculiar couple. "She is the mother of that little Rose, and he is the father. So that weird girl is the daughter of Hana and Hayashi, and that bitter one is the son of Mikoto and Fugaku." He spoke as if that was something incredible, so that means that this blonde is. Knowing that he had already realized the truth, Minato smiled. Who is it? Titebane, she inquired without knowing anything. Minato almost fell over in surprise. When he managed to stabilize himself, he looked at his girlfriend with a drop on his head. Well, what else could he expect from Kushina? That was such a normal thing. "He is our son, Kushina, our son in the future," the blonde sighed resignedly. Naruto was just like him, although with those marks on his cheeks and the unmistakable character of Kushina. The redhead looked at him with her mouth open and her cheeks flushed. "Power," she murmured, remembering the countless Titebeo so similar to her own Titebane. She nodded and caressed the stunned girl's cheek. "Yes, our son." "Our," Kushina repeated, abandoning all her fury, her violet eyes taking on a shine of pure bliss and happiness. Happiness to know that in the future they would have something that would be theirs alone, a son that would mean a new beginning, a life with the family they always wanted. Because Naruto represented what they had lost in the war. "Our son, Titebane," she squealed excitedly, throwing herself into a hug for Minato. The blonde laughed, put his arms around the redhead's waist, and hugged her against him, noticing a slight tremor that ran through his girlfriend's body. The happiness he felt at that moment could not be compared to anything. It was understandable. Naruto was his son, his family, and with him they would have the home they always wanted. In fact, he himself was dying to ask her what they were like in the future and what it was like back there, even in the middle of the war. "I hope they would be good parents." "A family, Titebane," Kushina sang with tears of happiness. "Naruto gives us a family. It's wonderful. How will we be? I hope we didn't spoil him, Mina-chan. If not, I'll take care of putting it straight. My son must be a good Uzumaki. Oh wait, sure, if he hangs out with Fugaku Baka's son, he'll become spoiled. Although I'm sure the future me won't let that happen, haha." "Calm down, Kushina. Do you know what that means, Titebane?" Kushina said with bright eyes. She brought her hands to his stomach and caressed him almost imperceptibly, that despite being a Jinchuriki, he too can have a family. "A family." Minato caressed her red hair, understanding the reasons why Kushina had reacted like that. She was not very feminine, nor did she express her emotions easily, and she was extremely proud of the simple fact of being an Uzumaki. For what they had just discovered was something they had always longed for since they were left alone after the wars. And Kushina mainly, since when she arrived in Konoha she knew what rejection and loneliness were for a while, and also because she was a Jinchuriki, she always feared not being able to have a family. And now that they knew Naruto, they knew that not everything would be bad in the future. Because even if they were in the war, they would surely be protecting Naruto and his son, right? "Oh." Naruto looked seriously into the eyes of the third, who at that moment was looking at him with a blank face, not quite believing everything he had told him. Jiraiya and Tsunade had sat down on the nearby benches, their expressions stunned. "It's not true," was the first thing Tsunade said with a trembling voice. "It is," Naruto said. "Why should we believe you?" She snarled at him furiously. You can lie to us. Besides, who is the idiot who chose you as the future successor? Hokage. Sakura let out a slight giggle and stepped forward. You, Shishu, he announced, knowing that he already had to tell her the complete truth, at least if he didn't want the Sanin going against them. She outlined an ironic half-smile at the reaction of her future teacher, and she looked at him with wide-eyed surprise. My name is Sakura Haruno, medic nin from Konoha, student of the god Aim Hokage. You. Tsunade Senju. Yes, you are the fifth. You were the one who admitted that Naruto would become Hokage after he retired. She was actually trying to start training him. She barely had time with all the attacks on Konoha. If Jiraiya and the third party were surprised, now they were literally scared. Tsunade was not an innocent schoolgirl. She was a fearful woman who did not recognize the strength of others, even if her life depended on it. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto then introduced himself, smiling. My parents are Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, and I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kaibai. That, said the third, and Jiraiya got up from their seats. It's impossible, Kushina is the Jinchu. Tsunade began to say. Okay, then let me tell you everything. From the beginning, Naruto cut in, looking at Sakura, who nodded. Hinata smiled at her to give her strength and absently caressed her hand. I've told you all about Madara, Danzu, and the Fourth Ninja War. If you are the son of Minato and Kushina, why do you have the last name Uzumaki? Jiraiya cut in. I'll tell you, but don't interrupt me, Titebeo, Naruto grumbled irritably. The Sanin raised their eyebrows at his attitude, which was so similar to that of Kushina. Talk, the third conceded, sitting back down. He was very curious despite everything. The day before, they had not told him much despite the fact that they stayed for many hours. And that fact that his student pointed out was unusual. He had also been curious to know why he had his mother's last name instead of his father's. And Naruto spoke. He told him absolutely everything his mother told him and everything the Kaibai had shown them. From the day he was born to the Fox's attack on Konoha, Danzu's betrayal, and his alliance with Madara, the death of his parents, and also the consequences that came with it, the misfortune of the Uchiha clan, the death of Rin, the pain of Kakashi, and all those who loved them, the rivalry and hatred that were born between the Uchiha and the Hyuga, the death of Hisashi, and finally the death of Hana and the massacre of the Uchiha clan. Everyone, Tsunade whispered, blinking to keep from crying. ... Naruto's eyes showed all his sadness, and she could no longer mistrust him. There's also a reason why we don't trust Orochimaru. As he said that, the eyes of both Sanin diverted towards him, looking at him with fear. In the future, he is a traitor to Konoha. He killed the third, invaded the village, and tried to lie. Tsunade and Jiraiya yelled, getting up instantly. Naruto took a step back in surprise. He had perfectly felt the strength of the friendship that united them. That simple word showed more than anything that they would defend their friend to the end. That caught him by surprise. Like Sakura and Sasuke, who were looking at them with half-closed eyes, Hinata had her eyes closed. She had nothing to do with that. All three knew their teachers very well. Sakura and Naruto always saw their resentment towards Orochimaru and the fact that they didn't seem to regret his death at all. However, there, in front of them, were the same people, a few years younger, refusing to believe their words and defending their friend. That inevitably reminded them, and Naruto finally understood why Jiraiya said those words to him the day he told him that he would train him for 2.5 years. His teacher, like him, had tried to rescue Orochimaru from the darkness. Shishu, it's the truth, Sakura said. I'm not your teacher, Brett. Tsunade hissed, looking at her with a lot of rejection. Don't talk to me like that, especially if it's to speak ill of my friend. Orochimaru is a traitor to Konoha. He killed the third, Databeo. Naruto yelled. The third one didn't say anything. He just stared at the fight as if there was nothing more interesting than that. I'm going to beat your mouth shut, Brett. The blonde made every attempt to go after Naruto, but Jiraiya's arm stopped her. Jiraiya, what? The Sanin was looking at them quite seriously. Enough, Tsunade, he said. And as for what they say, I'd like to see what evidence they have to prove that, she said with surprising coolness. Hey, he's our friend, Tsunade said, giving them a look of contempt. I'd like to see how you guys would react if you said that about your partner, the friend you grew up with on your ninja path, the friend who became part of your family. You think we don't know? Sakura yelled, holding back tears. Tell me, Tsunade-sama, which team you belong to. What is Kakashi-sensei's team? At first, they didn't understand why he asked that, but they still answered. 7, we are part of Team 7. Kakashi's team too. Sakura laughed sourly. It's like a curse, all of us on Team 7 have the same fate. Sakura-chan, Naruto said, trying not to talk too much. What are you talking about? What do we not know about how they feel? Hell, of course we know. Naruto and I had a partner who left us because of the search for power and the ambition of revenge. We had to see how he turned into a monster. And the worst thing is that no matter how many times we tried, we never managed to bring it back. Sasuke stiffened, glaring at his former partner with fury. Shut up, Sakura. You're nobody to shut me up, Sasuke. Sakura looked at him resentfully. After all, you said it yourself, you're no longer part of Team 7. Our companion died the day he decided that we were a hindrance in his revenge, the day you left Konoha, the day you became a traitor and a disciple of Orochimaru. Naruto released Hinata's hand in time, just to get between Sasuke and Sakura. The Uchiha seemed to have every intention of shutting Sakura up with a Chidori. Tsunade and Jiraiya looked at each other, understanding that the three of them were part of Team 7 of their time and that they had no right to claim them if they seemed to know what they were saying. You see it? Sakura asked coldly. That is what you have become. You only know how to kill and hurt to get what you want. At least I'm not a useless nuisance, Sakura. Sasuke hissed at her. Shut up both of you, Titebeo, Naruto said angrily. No. We'll get nowhere if we fight, Hinata agreed, looking at them sadly. Remember why we're here. Sakura nodded and turned to see the three, who were looking at everything without interrupting. Believe me, we understand everything perfectly, but it's the truth. Orochimaru did all of that. It's ambitious, Jiraiya conceded in frustration, but really, I don't think that's the path that remains for you. Naruto said, and let's make things clear. If we are here for something, it does not matter how or when we will return. But we won't let our future be hell now that we have the chance to change everything. Danzu is already on our list, as is the council. Orochimaru. We're not sure when he starts to turn bad, but after the Third Ninja War, he won't be saved anymore. In the meantime, you can try to save him. Tsunade gave him a suspicious look. You speak as if. Exactly, Grandma Tsunade, Naruto said. We'll kill them as soon as they try to betray Konoha. We won't let you do that, the Sanin said, ever. I told you that you wouldn't change the future. The Third intervened then. If that's the case, it must be for a reason. I will not permit. Sorry, Third. You were like my grandfather, I really appreciate it, but your decisions were what caused a lot of what we went through, starting with Orochimaru and Danzu. We will not let that happen again. Don't touch Orochimaru, we won't allow it, Tsunade snapped angrily. Have you forgotten who we are? It won't help, Hinata whispered, interjecting for the first time. They've outdone them. Students always exceed the teachers. They, Team 7, are the disciples of the Sanin. Jiraiya turned his gaze toward Naruto. The blonde deflected his instantly. That's all, Titebeo, he finished saying. All of us, including Sasuke, are willing to go to the last to change everything. Even if we have to fight with you. Let's go. Naruto tugged on Hinata's hand and quickly left. Behind them were Sasuke and Sakura, looking at each other with the same contempt, as if they had never been friends before or anything. It's impossible, Tsunade mumbled. No one has been able to surpass us. They are our future, said the third, shaking his head. Even so, Orochimaru, no, we will not let our friend fall into the dark. If what they say is true, we still have a chance. Oh, all right, almost there, Orochimaru said with a serious nod. The little girl in front of him, with lilac hair and a sarcastic and somewhat haughty look, nodded, wiping the wounds on her face, and returned to the attack position. Orochimaru was pleased with Anko's efficiency. He had made a good choice having her as her student. Come on, sensei. Okay, now, Orochimaru. The serpent Sanin snorted and looked with some resignation at the place where his two companions came from. Anko, the lesson ends here. Tomorrow at the same hour. Yes, as I say. The girl cast a mocking look at the place where her teacher's friends were coming from and ran in the opposite direction. She could use a little practice on her own. What do they want? Orochimaru questioned himself, irritated by the interruption. Tsunade and Jiraiya were still aware of the words those children had said, and they refused to accept all of that. There still had to be a chance. Orochimaru raised his eyebrows when he saw that they were silent. Let's train for a while, Jiraiya suggested, smiling, just like in the old days. The old times, Tsunade repeated with a laugh. It's not like we were old. Orochimaru rolled his eyes at the string of nonsense his friends were saying, but even so, an imperceptible smile graced his face. They looked at each other with some challenge and, at the same time, raised their thumbs to bite and draw some blood. At the same time, they raised their hands and struck them against the ground to shout, Kuchio's no jutsu. There was a shudder and a cloud of smoke hid them. When it disappeared, they were on top of a toad, a slug, and a snake. Have fun, the Sanin shouted. Oh, Mikoto, Fugaku, Hayashi, Hizashi, Hana, Minato, and Kushina turned just to feel the shudder and see in the distance the figures of the summons of their teachers. They smiled slightly. It had been a long time since they had seen them fight like that. Normally, in recent years, they had been distancing themselves. Where will they be? Titeben. Kushina continued to search for her son and his friends, although this time it was no longer to force them to tell her anything. Especially since the others had already found her and she was sure that Fugaku, Hayashi, and Hizashi still didn't know anything. Those idiots weren't like Minato, who was too cunning to figure things out quickly. And he had realized how jealous Fugaku had become of the attention that Mikoto was giving Sasuke. It would be funny to feed that jealousy so that he would later find out that the boy in question was his son. An evil smile graced his face. And he says that I'm a monster, the Kaibai scoffed inside. If they knew you, girl, you have an evil mind worse than mine. Shut up, Kyubai-chan. Kushina made a disgusted face. I feel bad. Mikoto swayed slightly, supported by Fugaku, who watched him with concern. The black-haired woman was pale, and suddenly she got up and ran away from them with a hand over her mouth, holding back her nausea. Hana and Kushina instantly followed in concern, finding her not far behind, throwing up. I must have eaten something bad, he whispered, wiping his mouth. Hana raised her eyebrows, and Kushina drew a wry smile on her face. Yeah, sure, he scoffed, or maybe doing dirty things with Fugaku Baka has already brought you consequences. Mikoto blushed and glared at him. It could be, Hana whispered with red cheeks. You may be pregnant. I don't think so. Mikoto got up from the ground. We better keep looking for them. They didn't take a step when they saw the 4 boys in the distance. Kushina only looked from her to her son, Mikoto to hers, and Hana to her daughter's flushed face, noticing perfectly well that Naruto still hadn't let go of Hinata's hand. She smiled at that. Naruto, come here, Titebane. Kushina screeched, running in his direction. The blonde turned pale, remembering that they had been running away from his mother. He picked up Hinata again and ran back in the opposite direction. Naruto, I don't want to die young, Titebeo. He whimpered without noticing that this time Kushina had no murderous intentions, even less than the others saw him with a drop on their heads. Neither Sakura nor Sasuke were running. They felt that this time there was no danger. Kushina quickened her pace. Minato sighed in resignation, and he went after his girlfriend and her son. Stop it or it's going to go wrong for you, Titebane. The redhead yelled, beginning to lose patience. I already said that I don't want to die young, Titebeo. Naruto yelled, running with the embarrassed Hinata in his arms. I want to have a family. And Naruto-kun, the red girl moaned. The blonde kept running and brought his face closer to Hinata's questioningly. This time, Hinata couldn't take the pressure anymore, and she ended up passing out. Hinata, what's wrong with you, Ttebayo? Wake up, Hinata. Naruto yelled, shaking her in her arms. Baka, Sakura muttered, hitting her forehead. Hinata, Hana yelled, running after them. Hana, where are you going? Izashi and Hayashi ran after her. The only ones left in their place were Sakura, Sasuke, Mikoto, and Fugaku, who felt sorry for others. When it came to Kushina Uzumaki, sometimes running away was the best remedy. Other times, things only got worse. As soon as they were gone, Mikoto turned to Sakura. Sakura, right. The pink-haired girl blinked in surprise for a moment, but when she got over the fact that Mikoto Uchiha was talking to her, she nodded, deliberately ignoring Sasuke's suspicious look. Fugaku didn't care about the matter. He knew his girlfriend well enough to know that she was kind to everyone, even to people he didn't know. Sakura-chan, the black-haired girl, smiled. Come on, I invite you to have lunch at our house. What are you saying? She hesitated, unsure what to say. The last thing she expected was to be left talking to Mikoto Uchiha, the mother of the boy she was in love with despite everything. I don't know if that's a good idea, Mrs. Mikoto, he said, looking at Sasuke out of the corner of his eye. The Uchiha glared at him, as if daring him to come along. In other circumstances, she would have accepted the invitation to get to know Sasuke better or to make him angry as payment for his suffering, but at that moment, she was worried about Naruto and Hinata. The blonde fool must be running through half the village with poor, passed-out Hinata in her arms, with her hysterical mother behind them, and on top of her with her parents and Hinata's uncle. She would have to make sure to heal him after whatever beating he received. Mikoto pouted. Maybe in your future I'll be a lady, but here I'm barely 18. The Uchiha put her hands on her waist. Not so much formality is necessary. Come on, come with us, we sure know each other, right? You're Sasuke-kun's teammate. Sakura looked at him, surprised. How do you know? Simple. Mikoto straightened up with dignity. She looked over her shoulder at the 2 Uchihas who were waiting for her, both arms folded and their gestures indifferent. As they say, like father, like son, Sasuke-kun, as Fugaku, does nothing but say HMP. He has such a poor vocabulary, and the fact that he talks to you and Naruto even to insult each other is proof that they know each other. Hinata doesn't even look at her, so I doubt he's even spoken to her once. The pink-haired woman smiled in admiration at how easy it was for Mikoto to find out some details about her son, even though at that moment she didn't know that Sasuke was her son, for her, because Sasuke still hadn't told them that their mother already knew everything. I would love to, Mikoto, but then. It's been said, the Uchiha interrupted him without letting him finish speaking. She enthusiastically hung onto her arm and began to walk, dragging her the wrong way, gesturing for Fugaku and Sasuke to follow her. Despite wanting to clarify that she had to stay to heal Naruto, Sakura couldn't do anything. Trying to explain to Mikoto Uchiha that she couldn't go eat with them was the same as talking to the wall. Now that she understood where Sasuke had gotten his great ability to ignore others, the black-haired girl ignored him completely and refused to listen to her until they changed the subject. So on the way to the Uchiha neighborhood, the pink-haired woman tried to see the bright side of things, but she really didn't see anything. For her part, Mikoto gave him a fixed look when Sakura was distracted by looking at some shops. She was pretty, rude, and tomboyish. Before her was another Tsunade. Comparing her to Kushina would be extremist. The redhead was pretty, but rude was an understatement to describe her. She was equally tomboyish. No, Sakura was like a new Tsunade, a more sentimental one, obviously. She had seen the ease with which she lost her temper, the ease she had both to hate and to love. Neither Kushina nor Tsunade were characterized by that. Although she did not deny that she looked a lot like them, and she liked that, she was a girl with character, although she would have preferred that she not answer yes to her son, of course, although Sasuke had been rude. That was the reason why he wanted to talk to her. It was clear that Sasuke would not tell him anything. That worried her a lot, too much to tell the truth. The relationship between the village and the Uchiha clan had always been tense, but since Fugaku made friends with Hayashi and Minato, the latter being fully respected by the entire village, he brought them a truce that they received with relief. They wouldn't do anything against the village, ever, and if Minato trusted that, they all did. And she hoped that with time everything would improve. If Minato had become Hokage, which was very likely due to his strength, the Uchiha clan would have another chance to redeem the stormy shadows that they had always carried on their backs. Fugaku could make plans with Minato and benefit the entire village. Everything would be fine, yes, but I am the only Uchiha alive. Sasuke's words didn't leave her alone. Something had happened in the future, something very serious, something that had destroyed any chance of an alliance, something that had devastated his clan, and something that had left his son in complete solitude, something that had transformed Sasuke into a human being. No feelings. He only had to see her red eyes and cold, surly expression to know she wasn't happy and probably wouldn't be if everything stayed as it was. Sakura-chan, he called sing-songly. The medic Nin raised her eyebrows in question. Will you stay to sleep? Huh, Tsunade-sensei kicked you out of his house, remember. Where will you sleep? Sakura cursed under her breath at the memory of that, brushing a few strands of hair from her face with her free hand and biting her lip thoughtfully. His future teacher, or not so future, she was no longer sure if she would train him in the future after seeing his reaction. Made it clear to him that she would sleep in the street if he didn't tell her because he knew her so well and even if he already knew the reason. Tsunade didn't look pleased, knowing that she was his student. She sighed sadly. The Sanin had been the closest thing to a mother she had since her parents' deaths. I'll find somewhere to sleep, Sakura mumbled, looking straight ahead. In our house, there is enough space, Mikoto said in a tone of voice that admits no reply. No, Sasuke and Sakura said at the same time. Mikoto cocked her head to glare at her soon-to-be son, who was watching the conversation as well as Fugaku. The last thing Sasuke wanted was Sakura getting in the way now that she had her parents alive, and surely now that Itachi would be born soon. Sakura-chan, Mikoto insisted irritably. I'm sorry, Mikoto, but the pink-haired girl searched for a credible excuse. Thank heavens. In the distance she saw pink hair. Her mother was walking near them, chatting with some friends while eating ice cream. I'll try to talk to my mother. It's been quite a while since I haven't seen her, she murmured sadly. The black-haired girl watched Akemi laugh without being aware that she had her future daughter nearby. A lot of time. My parents were murdered when I was 14 years old, he informed with a cracked voice. They were on a trip trading products in the village of the Key. They murdered them to rob them. Oh, Mikoto bit her lower lip uncomfortably. I'm sorry. I miss them a lot, so I will try to get closer to them. If you want, but my offer still stands. Thank you. It's no big deal. Sasuke walked more slowly, relieved to know that she wouldn't stay at his house. The last thing he wanted was to have her around. Fugaku seemed neither relieved nor irritated. He was indifferent, even slightly annoyed by the fight he had with Mikoto in the morning when he brought Sasuke his breakfast and did nothing to him. The black-haired woman changed the conversation, chatting about other things with the pink-haired woman to release the tension at the mention of her parents. However, when they were already at the entrance to the Uchiha neighborhood, she stumbled a little pale. Mistress Mikoto. Sakura hesitated worriedly, forgetting not to call her ma'am. Mikoto stopped shaking her head and said nothing before passing out, being caught in time by Sakura. Mikoto. The three of them yelled at the same time. Or, Kushina clenched her fists, a small vein swelling on her forehead. Damned brat, he muttered to himself. Naruto kept running, escaping from her, scared, and at the same time he was holding the weird girl who was unconscious and all red. It reminded her of Hana when she first met her, too shy and embarrassing. Well, it was her daughter for a reason. Kushina, you have to calm down, you're scaring him, Minato said next to her. Only he could keep up with her without any problem. It was Konoha's yellow lightning for a reason. In fact, the speed she used was nothing compared to her boyfriend's speed, especially when he used his space-time techniques. The redhead pouted, hesitating. Calm down. I'll catch up with him, Minato said, giving him a reassuring smile. Oh, okay, Titebane, she muttered irritably, her cheeks flushing pink. Minato always had that effect on her, no matter how angry she was. He was the only one who could support her and calm her down with no more than her comforting and calm words. It was impossible to be angry with him. The blonde smiled amusedly and gave him a kiss on the lips, then turned and continued on his way. She sulked to herself, folding her arms and watching her boyfriend disappear, going after her future son and Hana's copy. It really annoyed her that Naruto had fled from her. She wasn't going to kill him either. She just wanted to talk to him to see that he was healthy and that nothing had happened to him. After all, they had come from a war. And it was her son. From the future, but her son, and she cared a lot about him. Kushina sighed after a few minutes. It wouldn't be good for her to continue standing in the middle of the streets. She shuffled over and sat down on one of the nearby benches. Surely Hayashi, Hizashi, and Hana, who had run after her, would not take long to arrive. She even found it difficult to assimilate the information that Minato gave her and her own assumptions about her. Before them were their children, all those who knew what the future held for them. So curious, brat, asked the Kaibai mockingly. What did you expect, Kyubai-chan? She answered without losing her cool. I know suffering and loneliness, and those children. The eyes of all of them are so dark with sadness and pain. It's not like that's nice. Whatever happens in the future is not good. You can't expect anything else, girl, the Kaibai commented in a bored tone. In the ninja world, that's life. The redhead snorted at the demon's response. But it was true, nothing else could be expected. However, she knew very well how to distinguish the pain evident in everyone's eyes. It was not just the war and shinobi life, it was something else, something stronger. Tragedies, that was the only explanation. She herself was a kunoichi. She knew the pain of losing your family and friends, but even so, she stayed afloat because she had Minato and her best friends by her side. Those children, her own son, perhaps had the glow of happiness that friendship gave, but family ties, she hadn't found that anywhere. As if they had never had a family, or in any case, as if they had lost it before they even met it. Kushina, Hana arrived, breathing hard and standing in front of her with a frown. "Where's Hinata?" "I don't know, Titebane," he answered. "Minato told me to stay. He's chasing Naruto and the weird girl." Hana closed her eyes while a small vein bulged on her forehead. Weird girl. She had a name. When she opened her eyes, she glared at her friend. When they met, Kushina also told him the same thing, that she was very weird for blushing and stuttering for nothing. Over time, that had passed, and her nickname was removed. Although that didn't matter to her because Hinata was her daughter, she didn't like that Kushina said that. "Her name is Hinata, she's not weird," she yelled, putting her hands on her waist. He was grateful that neither Hayashi nor Hisashi had reached them yet. Kushina raised her eyebrows when she saw her friend's anger. A mocking smile came to her face. "Why do you say that, Titebane? If she stops blushing over anything." The Hyuga pouted. She was just nervous because she likes Naruto. Kushina's eyes widened. What is Naruto like?" "That," she yelled, standing up. Hana frowned, lifting her chin stubbornly. "Yeah, he likes your son," he explained. "Surely you already know that, right?" Seeing the redhead's irritated look, he confirmed his suspicions. "And to all this, can you know why you react like this?" "There is nothing wrong with my daughter. Hinata is very pretty." Uzumaki bit her lower lip. "I'm not going to deny that, Titebane," she agreed, crossing her arms. "She is very beautiful. But she's weird. She blushes and stutters over anything, even fainting." "So what?" Hana defended irritably. "Do I have to remind you how Minato reacted when you were in front of him?" That reply made Kushina open and close her mouth, blushing and without any hope of rebutting that argument. Everyone knew, including herself, that Minato would always get flustered and blush whenever she was near him, not to the point of stuttering or fainting, but always stopping, distracted, and staring off into space. Even Jiraiya had to throw giant scrolls in her face to make him react when he lost concentration in training, which always made Fugaku and Hayashi laugh. That all ended when he rescued her from those ninjas at the age of 14. But those episodes would never be forgotten. When she discovered the reason why Minato always got nervous before, she really couldn't help but laugh. She knew his reactions, but she always ignored that she was the cause. That is to say, Minato was the most sought-after and handsome boy in the village. Why does he have to pay attention to the bloody habanero? When she fell silent and flushed, she saw Hana smile triumphantly. And not only that, Hana continued, smiling proudly, "When we were kids, you always said that Minato was a sissy weirdo. And look at you, you ended up completely crushing on him." Kushina glared at him, feeling her cheeks burn. She had no retort against that. "You see it. The Hyuga said there's nothing wrong with weirdos." "But, Titebane," he threw a tantrum at not having anything to say. "Well, maybe this will finish convincing you then," Hana yelled, knowing that the only way to help her daughter was to have Kushina by her side. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the redhead not to intervene in her plans. She softened her gaze and stopped frowning. If her love was great enough to sacrifice herself for him, would you accept Hinata? Those words had the virtue of dispelling all the irritation from Uzumaki, who lowered her arms and blinked in confusion. For a minute, which seemed like an eternity, she watched. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.